Yes, we are live and we're ready to get started.
Okay, very good. Um, I will call this meeting to order and we will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. If you would all rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember D'Amico.
Yes.
Councilmember Duran.
Here.
Councilmember Meister.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
Here.
Mayor Horwath.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And just before we do move on to the closed session agenda report, I am aware that we are under curfew now in the city of West Hollywood. Just wanted to give a quick update that we've been apprised of. We've gotten an update of all of the actions that have taken place over the weekend up until this point. The city council did have a closed session both before this meeting and earlier today at noon. And we were debriefed on the plans for this evening to work hard to keep everyone safe in the community. Now our manager is at the EOC along with all of our many of our public safety personnel to coordinate our efforts this evening. We have our assistant manager with us, David Wilson. Thank you very much for being with us. For anyone who is at home and would like more information about what is ongoing this evening, you can text 888-777 and you will get Nixle updates directly to your phone. These are updates from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and the city about what's going on outside, or you can follow the city's social media at WeHostCity on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, Madam Clerk, or Madam City Attorney, if you would give us a report of the closed session.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. As the mayor just mentioned, I have two closed sessions to report on. The first was an emergency meeting of the City Council that was called today under Government Code 54956.5. As the mayor mentioned, we had began at noon today. We had members of the public speak for about 45 minutes, from about 12 to 12:45, and then the City Council had a closed session on threat to public services or facilities and a meeting with the Los Angeles County Sheriff Department captain under Government Code 54957. That meeting adjourned shortly after 1 o'clock. The City Council had a second closed session this evening at 5 o'clock. There were no members of the public to speak on that item. Council discussed the one matter on the posted agenda and adjourned at about 5:10 this evening. That concludes my report. Oh, and took no reportable actions on either closed session agendas. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. And now we will move on to approval of the agenda. Madam City Clerk, do you have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I do. Requesting that we table item 4A, 5D as in dog,
Okay.
and 5G until June 15th.
Okay, so that will be our next city council meeting. We're going to hold those three items until that meeting. We have any other changes to
Yvonne,
the
can you repeat those?
Yes, item 4A, 5D, and 5G.
Okay, and so to read those out loud by title so everyone knows what we will be continuing to the next meeting. Item 4A is the amendment to the city's urgency ordinance extending the city's temporary residential eviction moratorium because there will not be a change in the status of conditions between now and then. I believe that staff believed we could table that item to our next meeting. Item 5D, discussion of a city initiated cannabis initiative measure for the November 2020 ballot. That will also be delayed. And finally, item 5G, appointment of city council members as delegates and alternates to various organizations, committees, and conferences to city council subcommittees. I do know that we also have two items that we would like to introduce as urgency items. Item number 1, recovery measures to support businesses as they safely reopen under the Los Angeles County's program. And urgency item number 2, resolution ratifying Executive Order 2020-5 5. Um,
I would move that we add those items to the agenda.
Okay. Are there any objections to that? Yes. Hearing none, we will add those to our agenda. Now, with the addition of those, and we're tabling 4A, 5D, and 5G, are there any other changes to the agenda? Councilmember Meister, I saw you.
Thank you. I would like to pull 2F on the homeless initiative. I believe staff was going to make a presentation to us. And I was wondering if we could move to excluded consent. 5A, which is Bethesda Legal Services. 5C, which is the grant program funds. 5E, which is the MOU with employees. And 5F, which is the recovery assistance for legacy businesses.
You wanted to add those to the consent agenda?
I'm sorry, I want to move them to the consent agenda.
All right, that's what you meant.
That's
So,
what I meant.
so item 5E, 5F, 5A, and 5C will be consent, and you'd like to pull item 2F. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
It's my understanding, given the nature of tonight's meeting, if anything gets pulled, we're going to try and continue that to the next meeting, but we can address that as needed.
If there's no urgency from staff, I'm fine with that.
Okay, great. Do we have any other changes to the agenda? Councilmember Duran.
Mayor, we can move 5B, which is the housing trust loan of 6.4 million to consent.
I'd like to
Are there?
discuss that.
Sorry,
I have comments about that, so I'd prefer that we keep on.
we're going to keep it on for discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. So, are there any changes to the agenda? Right now, we've added the 2 urgency items and pulled item 2F and tabled 4A, 5A, 5C. I'm sorry, that's not right. We've tabled 4A, 5D, and 5G. We have moved to consent 5A, 5C, 5E, 5F. I have that correct, Madam City Clerk?
I would move the agenda.
Mayor,
that
if
is
I may.
Oh, okay. Yes, sorry. David, go ahead.
Staff would prefer to table item 2F to the next meeting to
Okay.
6:15.
I thought that might be the case. So we'll table that one then instead of moving it to excluded consent.
Can
Any other
we,
changes?
Make sure that that's put on our regular agenda and not on the consent calendar.
Yes, we
Yes,
can
we
do
will.
that. Right. With all of those changes,
I would move we approve the agenda.
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember D'Amico,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran,
Aye.
Councilmember Meister,
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem Horvath. Mayor Heilman,
Aye.
Mayor Horvath.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion passes.
we're just used to the old rotation. Very good. And now move to adjournments. Councilmember D'Amico, we'll start with you.
Thank you. So I wanted to adjourn in memory of Larry Kramer. Larry Kramer was a playwright and a screenwriter, an essayist, an AIDS activist who helped bring attention to the AIDS epidemic like no other individual or else in America or around the world. His career as a writer began in the 70s when he wrote a groundbreaking book called Faggots. His most endearing artistic work was The Normal Heart, about a group of gays struggling to bring attention to the AIDS crisis based on his own personal experience, highlighting at that moment how the personal really truly is the political. In 1981, Larry Kramer co-founded the Gay Men's Health Crisis in New York, which was the first service organization for HIV positive people. A few years later, he helped to found ACT UP, the group whose street actions demanding a speed up in AIDS drug research and an end to discrimination against gay men, lesbians, and others with HIV, severely disrupted the operations of government offices, Wall Street, the Roman Catholic hierarchy, eventually played an essential role in how we think about healthcare and the Food and Drug Administration line for approval of drugs to and including remdesivir for the epidemic we're now dealing with, the coronavirus. To Mr. Kramer, I never knew you, but you were like a crazy uncle who I loved and was happy never my Thanksgiving. I send you off with love, Larry. Thank you.
Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to join my colleague in asking that we adjourn in memory of Larry Kramer. I heard Larry speak at the National March on Washington in 1987, and the words that he spoke and the anger and the rage around the AIDS epidemic led to the formation of ACT UP New York, and within a short period of time, ACT UP Los Angeles. He was caustic, he was crude, he was vulgar, he was critical, he upset people from Anthony Fauci to other AIDS activists and everybody in between. But he was guided perpetually by his desire and his commitment to protecting LGBT people. Only met him once. It was a pleasure and an honor to meet him that one time. And I hope that he is in power. The other request I have is somebody local who was one of our own HIV activists, and that was Irene Soderberg. Irene passed away this morning, a very dear friend to many of us on the city council. She was an entertainer. She was an HIV positive woman. She used her incredible voice and her singing at so many HIV and AIDS fundraisers around West Hollywood. I last saw her when John Carvalho and I had dinner with her at Cafe de Trois right before it closed. I'm glad I got to spend the last time that I had with Irene giggling about the good old battle days of the 80s and the 90s. And we each had an opportunity to tell each other we loved each other. And I'm glad that I got to do that before we lost her this morning. Rest in peace to Irene Soder, one of our residents, an activist and a warrior against it. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Meister.
No, I had Irene as well, so.
Very good.
Nothing.
Okay, and I would like to adjourn also in memory of George Floyd, who was murdered by Minneapolis police on Thursday, May 28th. He was a former student athlete from Houston, Texas, and in 2014 he moved to Minneapolis in search of a new job and a fresh start. He was known as Big Floyd. He began working as a truck driver and as a security guard, and was known as a loving person with a quiet personality but a beautiful spirit. He leaves behind a 6-year-old daughter who lives in Houston with her mother, and has set us all on fire in our activism to work harder, do better, and never let his memory die. There were no mass shootings since our last meeting, and so that is my adjournments this evening. Now I will turn it over to our senator. Our state senator, Ben Allen, has joined us to provide a little bit of an update. Certainly before we were planning this meeting, we were interested in all of Sacramento's work on COVID and to keep us from the public health pandemic we're facing. Obviously, we have new circumstances, and so we wanted to make sure that we invited you and we hear what's going on in the state Senate, and you can give us any insights that we should know at the local level. Senator Allen.
Well, thanks so much, Beth, and to all my friends on the council. It's so fantastic to see everybody. I know when we were planning on this, it was as you say, different circumstances, and I certainly hope that the folks out there who are listening are heeding the curfew orders of the county and encouraging those who they know and love to do the same. We certainly want to make sure that we don't repeat some of the rest that happened in the evenings of the last couple of days. I know it's been very difficult. Obviously, I want to start by seconding your heartfelt adjourn in memory, Mayor, given what happened to Mr. Floyd. I mean, it was a terrible, terrible thing to witness as a human being and as an American. I'm very thankful to the vast majority of the protesters who got out there and expressed their righteous anger and their sadness this weekend. They did so peacefully, and they called attention to the inequities in our society that we all know should have been rectified a long time ago. I'm thankful to the community members who've shown up in droves in the mornings clean up and support our local business owners suffering incredible losses today in my own home in Santa Monica. And, those folks along Fairfax and Melrose who experienced similar violence to their properties over the past couple of nights. I just want to express I guess I could only can hope that by continuing to amplify the cries of anguish and having these difficult conversations that we can bend the arc of our moral universe towards justice. And so I know we have lots to fix. I just want to remind everybody both on this council and also all of our good friends in the city of West Hollywood, our office remains ready to assist whenever possible. Please reach out to us by phone, by email, by website. We will list all of those. But I want you to know that our office is here for you. I know I speak the same for our family member, Richard Bloom. Both of us care deeply about this wonderful West Hollywood community, and we want to do everything we can to ensure the community is safe and that people are support that they need, both in terms of the current immediate challenges, but also this broader pandemic that we're facing. I think the original idea was that I would come on and talk a little bit about both what's happening in Sacramento, some of the things I'm working on, some issues related to the budget, and of course, coronavirus and reopening. Let me just say a little bit briefly about coronavirus. I know we've all been up to our ears in that issue. Certainly the coronavirus continues to make its way through our state, for better, for worse. Over the course of the last month of May, we see encouraging signs that that the staying at home order has been working. The incredible sacrifices that people have made, both psychologically, financially, and staying at home, trying to stay apart from others. Obviously, our folks in the first responder and medical communities have been working incredibly hard to allow us all to stay at home, and this has really flattened the curve, and it's allowed us to avoid some of the terrible choices that were being faced by our friends in the medical world in Chicago, Louisiana. I mean, a fraction. We've had some terrible losses here in the state of California, and certainly, unfortunately, the county of Los Angeles has had some of the worst numbers in the state of California. But certainly, if you compare even our numbers in LA, they don't come close to the kind of suffering that we've seen in places like New York and New Orleans and Chicago, let alone Italy, elsewhere. I will say, despite our cautious optimism, we know that we must be specifically driven in our approach to reopening and getting folks back to work. The state has announced a resilience roadmap, reopening businesses sector by sector, and it's all about the level of risk posed to operators and customers alike, including the extent to which they can implement robust guidelines for safe operation. The governor has, over the past few weeks, been delegating more and more local public health officials, and they're now the ones who can determine when an area is ready for our next phase of reopening. I know there's been a lot of concern about the extent to which maybe this is being done too quickly, and I know, I would say that it would be a real shame if all the sacrifice that we've undergone over the last couple of months, both psychological, financial, otherwise, would be rendered moot because we opened too quickly. Now, there is a way we can halt the reopening process, and we saw this in places like Lassen County, for example. I mean, they were one of the first counties to reopen. They had almost no cases of COVID-19, but as they began to reopen, arguably too quickly, they had a new outbreak, and then of course they had to clamp again on the reopening. So I think we're going to have to be prepared for this cycle of lifting and closing to adapt to future outbreaks. Certainly as more and more people have been on the streets recently, that's going to, both because of the protests, but also because of the reopenings, it'll be interesting to see. We're going to have to monitor very closely the spread and the state of play of the virus when we're making decisions about how to reopen responsibly. The legislature has resumed operations, but with a lot of changes. We've gone significantly on the bills that the legislators are pursuing. The committee themselves have also cut down on the number of bills that folks are pursuing. There's been top priority given to COVID-19, obviously homelessness, wildfire-related legislation, but other kinds are still allowed. This has been, I think, the fact that there's been such a narrowing has been disappointing to people, but there's a lot of important bills that are not going to have the chance to be heard here. We've also been practicing social distancing. The have been very nervous about allowing for the kind of remote voting that you've been allowed to engage in, including in this meeting. And that was, of course, done because the right under his emergency powers to give some flexibility under the Brown Act. But some of the more conservative lawyers that work for the state assembly, I think, were very concerned that there, might be challenges to the laws that we passed if we didn't cast votes in Sacramento, given the way the Constitution is written. And so we've been holding committees in Sacramento, engaging in social distancing. We've got these screens and we are on masks, and it's quite a thing. Leaders who are present in Sacramento to have their votes counted. That's actually why I'm up here right now. Those that are not in Sacramento are able to participate remotely, but they're not able to have their vote. And so that's been, that's certainly been a tricky but an interesting experience for all of us. I'm continuing to work on a number of bills relating to the environment that I know folks know that's an area of real passion for me. I serve as chair of our Environmental Quality Committee. I'm also chairman of our Environmental Caucus for the legislature. So I've got a big bill on plastic reduction that I know many of you are aware of. It addresses our waste crisis, and it holds corporate producers accountable for the end use associated with plastic waste. And of course, something that has been an area of concern for our cities. And the League of Cities has been a great partner in this effort because of the extent the bottom has fallen out in the recycling system. And so we want a system in place similar to what we've done for climate change, where we set very broad, ambitious goals for climate pollutant reductions, and basically task our air board helping us meet those reductions. We want to task Cal Recycle, which is the agency that oversees this area of the state's economy, with the task, working closely with industry and all sorts of different players from the private sector to meet these goals for waste reduction. So working on SB 45, which is our wildfire and climate resiliency bond. This is a bond measure that will focus dollars on projects directly related to minimizing the impacts of climate change. Our communities adapt to the changing environment. A lot is focused on fire resiliency, but also things like drought and floods. And so I've actually been working with your city and others in the area on trying to make sure we can get some funding in there. Part of what it will involve is for cities like yours, heat island effect, helping our cities be more resilient in an ever warming climate. I think one of the things that we want to make sure that we do everything we can to mitigate and lessen our impact on climate change, but we also now have to recognize at this point that climate change is a reality, whether we like it or not. And so the extent we can help our cities be more resilient and be able to better address a warming climate is an important thing. I don't know if folks followed, but UCLA, for example, has focused extensively on a massive research project that involved what a warmer Los Angeles looks like in 2050, and what sort of supports will we have to provide to cities to help you be more resilient. So that's certainly an important focus for SB 45. I think I'm working on, and this is something that I want to give a special shout out to the firefighters who've been working overtime over the last couple of days, who just been into difficult circumstances, getting pelted in some cases on Melrose and Fairfax and Santa Monica, Long Beach, to put out fires and keep the communities and neighborhoods safe. I'm working very closely with our firefighters right now to pursue SB 1044, which is a bill that bans the use of PFAS, which is a carcinogenic, a dangerous chemical that's been used in foam and equipment for years. It's a known toxic chemical. It contaminates drinking water. It causes cancer, kidney and liver damage, thyroid disorders, birth defects. It's something I wanted to work on for a long, long time. But I finally, we obviously, our friends in the firefighting community, they care about the long-term health impacts of their members, clearly, fire, of course, but they care a lot more about the short-term health impacts. They want that they have the tools to fight the fire that's right in front of them at the time they're fighting it. And so we worked really closely with them to ensure that they felt comfortable that if we do phase out the dangerous chemicals, other types of less dangerous chemicals that are available, that are highly effective in fighting fires, but less impactful on the long-term health of a firefighter and our groundwater. And you look at other countries, other states that have banned PFAS, airports, and Australia. I mean, states have done so already. as well. And so we've been able to connect them with and work with the firefighting communities in those jurisdictions to get us to a place where we've created a bill that keeps firefighters safe and makes sure that they have the they need to fight fires. Obviously, on our minds right now is the state budget, and it's certainly been an area of real interest and a lot of debate and discussion. The governor, of course, back in at the beginning of the year, had a robust, very generous, and very strong budget. We were in a very strong place as a state back in January, and then, of course, the coronavirus economic crisis hit. We've had to dramatically scale back economic activity in the state, and as a result, our state budget is facing a big shortfall as well. And that's certainly not new to anybody on this call who's been trying the realities of protecting the state budget, the city budget in West Hollywood. So right now, the governor is projecting a $54.3 billion shortfall. That's the largest in state history. The governor's budget plan that he just came out, May 15th, accounts for this shortfall by making various cross-state programs. Now, last week, the state Senate proposed its own alternative to the state budget, and our version differs in a couple of ways. And as you know, there's a very interesting and delicate balance that now goes forward between the state assembly, the Senate, and the governor. And we basically all have to come to agreement as we proceed. And we have to do it by the middle of June. So, so basically, the governor's budget preemptively makes sense, assuming that the federal government will not step in with additional stimulus. And if stimulus does materialize, then his budget will backfill those programs. So that's the approach: a preemptive set of cuts, and then a backfill of those cuts if the federal government helps us out. The state Senate, I think, has a more optimistic view that federal funds will be made available. We certainly very closely to our partners at the level. Well, I don't think anybody believes that the House's CARES 2.0 will be passed as is. Even a dramatically scaled back version of that CARES 2.0 could still mean very significant support for our states that are facing the economic crisis. While a lot of our friends on the Republican side have certainly expressed a lot of skepticism, I also think that they're also they're hearing a lot from their own states, local governments about their own economic challenges, and they don't want to see the kinds of vital public services that cities like yours provide to the residents of your community be cut in their communities. And so, I think we're a little more confident that there will be some funding. And so the way that we set up our budget, it basically says that we've set up a budget assuming that there will be funding. Now, of course, if federal money does not become available by October 1st, then that will trigger some strategic maneuvers and some cuts to maintain the programs that we all care about while balancing the budget. And instead of making deep cuts, we're going to rely significantly on a rainy day fund. It's part of why we created it, and other reserves that exist that we've prudently saved for a time such as this. This allows us to protect core education programs so that our children in our schools don't bear the greatest burden of this pandemic. It also preserves important social safety net programs that, if lost, would cause more long-term harm than short-term budgeting. This is everything from job training programs, access to health for seniors, and so programs like the MSSP that I know that a lot of are able to take advantage of in the city of West Hollywood. So I know that a lot of you are concerned about how the CARES funds will be dispensed to local governments across the state. And let me also say that I know that it's very much reading what I've and being in contact with Congressman Liu's office, and I assume you guys are speaking to folks from Congressman Schiff's office, but it's certainly the intention, at least from my understanding of the Democrats in the House, to ensure that not only big cities get funding out of this next round of federal stimulus, and so that's going to be an important part of the conversation. Some of that may end up coming just directly to you.
Senator, you've covered so much for us today. We are so grateful that we sent you to Sacramento, and I just want to turn it over to my colleagues in case there's something that maybe they specifically wanted to ask. You've given a really great overview.
Sure.
Questions from my colleagues? Councilmember D'Amico.
I have a question about local role of our zoning code, and certainly we understand. We've been maybe if there's a list, I believe we belong near the top, if not at the top, of cities that have produced housing the right way for citizens who want to stay here, those who want to come to West Hollywood. And it just seems like every year, year after year, you whack us in the knee with a 12-inch pipe and say, I know you've been doing a good job, but here, take this shot to the knees because the way you've been doing it doesn't look like all the other cities that aren't doing it. And so you need to do it this way. And it's super disappointing, frankly, that it just seems like our efforts to sort of manage how our city grows, be thoughtful about the kinds of neighborhoods we have, those that are denser than others, those that are more child friendly, those that are more entertainment friendly. I mean, all that stuff then is just thrown out the window because, you live within a quarter mile of a subway stop. Maybe we don't want the subway stop if it means our neighborhoods are ruined. And so these are very complicated things that I think are better done by us than by you. Not you, but the bigger Sacramento you. And I think that be heard. You don't necessarily need to address it, but I just felt like it needs to be said directly to you and our constituents at the same time.
Yeah, well, just let me just say, I think that as you know, I mean, our friend Scott Wiener has proposed, far more aggressive proposal than any of the stuff that's actually been passed by the legislature. And inches of passage at the state senate, and the governor was absolutely ready to sign it. And if we hadn't blocked it, I think it would have made its way through. So there is a strong sense that's held by my colleagues that the state really starts to need to take action on housing production. It's my strong feeling that we have to strike a better balance than I felt that Scott had, B50, that allows communities to have some more control over look and how they grow, and so that's one of the reasons. What's one of the many reasons why I thought that he'd gone way too far with that bill. I will say, I think that that for better or for worse, that bill almost passed, and there's a reason why. There's a strong sense that cities have traditionally stood in the way of helping with housing production. Now, I know that West Hollywood has some of the highest density in the West, and so Hollywood is is a different type of thing. But your point about is a very good one. I certainly, the last thing, as someone who's passionate, and actually worked very closely with Wiener to try to make sure that part of the gas tax money would go to fund transit projects. The last thing I want to do is to create any political backlash against the creation of transit, because people might be afraid that the placement of a transit stop or a train station might density. So I guess my message back to you, message very much received. My message back to you is to really encourage you to, both as a city and also as members of the League of Cities, to really start to engage in this conversation in a way that will, and I know the League of Cities has started to show a willingness to engage in the conversation about housing more than ever before. I think the city of West Hollywood is actually well placed for all the reasons you articulated to kind of show a different model and show that cities don't necessarily have to stand in the way of housing production, but they have to figure out a way of doing this that is more respectful of local needs, local aesthetic, local conditions. I totally agree with you. The last thing I want is for there to be some bureaucrat at the top of the building at the housing department in Sacramento determining what zoning ought to look like in West Hollywood. And it's ridiculous. And so,
Councilmember Meister, I think is trying to jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that what we've seen from COVID-19 that we've learned how to live and work a different way for those people who are able to work from home. And I think that's going to change transportation needs. I think it's going to change housing needs. It's
Yeah.
going to change how we look at greenhouse gases. So, when you're working on all of those things, please keep that in mind, that post-COVID life is going to be very different, I think, from pre-COVID.
I think that's right. Let me say one other thing, by the way. I will say that that you in Santa Monica, several other cities really do prove a different model that I think is a good model and story for me to tell when I'm up in Sacramento. I mean, you guys have done so much work on affordable housing. You've also proposed amendments. You try to be part of the conversation, and I think what West Hollywood is just great proof. Density and single-family zoning actually can coexist. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it thoughtfully. There's a way to do it that's respectful of local needs, and I think West Hollywood has actually been a good example of this.
Thank you very much, Senator. Any other questions? Councilmember Duran.
Thank you, Mayor. Senator, thank you for being here with us. It's always good to see you and appreciate all the work you do on behalf of our city up in Sacramento. I want to talk about COVID-19 for a second. Storm heading our way, and it's the eviction moratoriums that all of our cities have passed. We are helping tenants across Los Angeles tread water for a bit. But the reality is those moratoriums will eventually expire. And suddenly, people who are now deeply in debt for past due rent, still not working, still not able to get their old jobs back, are going to be faced with a crisis. And the last thing we need to do is add to our homelessness rolls. It's the last thing we need to do. West Hollywood, like a lot of the smaller cities that you represent, we've been very prudent. Like the state, we've set aside record number of reserves. We have over 100 million in surplus. We were able to issue bonds that have given us more cash, so we have more liquidity. So I think, like a lot of the smaller cities you represent, we have the ability to help our tenants tread water for a bit longer by either continuing to give grants. We give grants now, and we may be able to do that for a longer period of time, but we need to work with Sacramento in a way to try to get possible reimbursement. We can do this for a while, and we can help keep, we're a city at almost 80% tenant, half of LA County is tenants, and we can help people afloat. But if there's a way to create financing tools, either through our housing authorities, our finance authorities, some way to perhaps someday recoup that when the state is again flush in tax money, or get tax credits for our city, it's going to help us so we can think both short-term and long-term.
Well, I just want to say so that's actually something that I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my charger here. My phone, my computer was a little less charged than I thought. So so there's an interesting proposal that has just come down from Bob Hertzberg, and we set up this recovery team that has come up with some ideas very much along those lines. This is an idea that renters will be forgiven for past due rents and will be protected from eviction under this tenant landlord stabilization program. And the idea is that landlords will be provided transferable future tax credits equal to the value of the missed rent payment. And then renters will reimburse the state for the cost of the tax credits over a 10-year period beginning in 2024. Exceptions offered for those with extreme economic hardship. So it's a controversial idea because to a large, it does depend on the landlord kind of joining the system. And so some people feel as though it's inappropriate for that choice, such an important choice, to be given to the landlord. But it's an example of how we're really trying to think creatively along the lines of what you've described, in basically recognizing the fact that as good Keynesians, right, now is the time where people need help. And it's appropriate for us to push some costs into the future associated with keeping people stable now, because as I say, the economic impact of people going destitute now and getting evicted now would be so detrimental, so destructive to our economy that we really ought to avoid that outcome. I mean, it's the wrong thing from both an economic perspective and from a moral perspective. So we're trying to think creatively. This is one idea that's out right now. There are others, but love to talk to you, council member, about and anyone on this call who's got ideas about ways to help finance some of these people's rents to keep people in their homes.
Thank you.
Mayor Tem?
Yeah, I see that the mayor wants to move us towards our regular meeting. But thank you so much for joining us tonight and for sharing your perspective from Sacramento. My colleagues raised a number of the issues that I have concern about, particularly with respect to both residential tenants and our business tenants. One other issue, I think we lost you.
No, I'm sure.
You're still there.
I'm literally just trying. I mean, I'm trying to get my charger to work. It's I
have the same problem all the time.
Yeah.
So. This is a different non-COVID related issue, but it's something that Councilmember Meister worked on with our homeless subcommittee, and that's the issue of getting people off the street with profound mental illness. And the conservatorship process really doesn't work effectively. It doesn't really help the individual who's on the street experiencing mental illness, and it doesn't actually work with the city and the county. I'm hoping that your office would be open to some discussion about more effective ways for us to help those people who are on the streets, who are not capable of caring for themselves. They may not be an immediate threat to themselves, but they certainly cannot care for themselves in any realistic manner. And the courts aren't really helping either. So we'll try to provide you with some ideas and suggestions, and hopefully we can have a conversation about that.
I'm very interested in that. I know there's a state audit of the Murphy conservatorship program has been called for. I was due at the beginning of COVID. It got pushed back. But this is actually an area where Scott Wiener's actually been doing some really, really good work, some very interesting work. But we're spending some time looking at it. I'd love to hear your ideas, council member, because I totally agree. I mean, we've got wonderful progressive cities like Santa Monica, West Hollywood that are really trying to fight by their homeless population, but they need the tools to do so. And so I'd love to talk to you about that and see if we can craft some workable policy together.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being with us tonight. We shared a lot of information. I know you're very accessible to us. And thank you for coming and sharing a little bit about what's going on in Sacramento, so we can get
I really
shot into it.
Appreciate you, appreciate your leadership, and I want to just thank you, Madam Mayor, for your steady leadership over the tough couple of days.
We're all stronger together, and I truly believe that. So we're in it together. Thank you for all that you're doing as well. And see you again soon.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you. I'm down to 1% on my computer. So this is
You
perfect.
made it. You made it. Now we're on to public comment. Madam City Clerk, if we can focus our public commenters today on consent agenda items that to start out, that would be great.
Yes, Mayor, I'll try to do that. Our first speaker is Seppi Shine.
Good evening.
Hi, Seppi.
Good evening, members. Hi. Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Seppi Shine, Business License Commissioner. I'm speaking, though, as a resident of Mid-City neighborhood of West Hollywood tonight. I wanted to speak tonight on the ongoing issues regarding the ability for West Hollywood residents to peacefully assemble and protest the murder of George Floyd and the other Black lives that have been tragically taken. I want to encourage this council to make a clear distinction between the peaceful protesters who are hurting and need these moments of assembly to begin to heal, and those who are just using these gatherings to vandalize our community. These are not the same people, and I ask the council to use caution when creating these curfews, which have the intended consequence of not allowing our communities to grieve in appropriate ways. I know this is not an easy decision, and I ask that you continue to differentiate the two groups and create your responses accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Seppi. Next, we'll have John Erickson.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam City Clerk. Hello, Mayor Horvath and council members. I want to start my comment tonight and say Black Lives Matter. This has been hard to watch for me, many of us. The conversations I've had have been hard. Residents and businesses are dealing with how to navigate this as best as possible. Institutional racism and violence that we've seen over the last few weeks is not new, but here in West Hollywood, I'm thankful for our first responders. I am thankful for those that are focusing on keeping our communities safe and our communities focused on making sure that those residents who can also go out and join in protest can make sure that they do it safely and securely by making sure that we're all there for each other, make sure that we can grieve and protest in ways that we see fit. And yet, in spite of our local efforts, we see so many of our community members, like myself and so many others, no less trouble today, but in part because of these legitimate, peaceful protests have been hijacked by people capitalizing on the unrest. And right now, I know people that are up there standing in solidarity at Crescent Heights and Sunset and all over Los Angeles saying that we will no longer stand for systemic oppression against any member of our community or those we stand in solidarity with. Remember that Stonewall was itself a riot, fighting the same injustices we are today. Queer people of color revolted against police harassment and violence, and they fought back with bricks. Pride is about all of us, not just some of us. We're in this together, and together we all need to work together to find a more and create a more equitable future. I hope everyone will join myself and others in checking in with neighbors, our friends and family members, and our business owners who are grieving, hurt, and who need a friendly phone call. I hope everyone will show up and make their voices heard, and I hope everyone will show up and say one thing with me: Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Mayor, the individuals who signed up to speak just stated that they wanted to speak under public comment.
Okay,
So,
how many more do we have?
about 7 or 8.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, please state your name, city of residence, and you have 2 minutes to speak under public comment.
My name is Jared, and I live in Cynthia and San Vicente. And my concern is the short-term so that is happening on the corner of Cynthia and San Vicente. The short-term rental management company has 2 units rented and 2 more prepared to go on the market. I'm afraid that the company with its complicit landlord will relocate me because they are getting way for the short-term rental units in my building where I've been for 8 years. Please help protect the sanctity and the tenancy of all tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please state your name, city of residence, and you have 2 minutes to speak under public comment.
Hello.
Hi. You have 2 minutes to speak under public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was my turn. You know, actually, I am. My name is Gary Burrows, and I'm a tenant in the same building as Jared, 8911 Cynthia. And this whole situation started last year. I read an article in Behoville that 2 of the units were being switched to short-term stay, and I kind of read through it, and I'm not a legal mind, so I didn't quite understand everything, except that the city was still searching for how to deal with this situation, and lo and behold, 2 more units now that are going to be short-term stay, and I've been in the city. It'll be 25 years this September, and I rely on the Cedars every 3 weeks for my cancer infusion and so forth, and I've grown to love this city, and I'm concerned about the future use of this building, and if it could be transformed into something where we could eventually be forced to eviction, or I just wish you would folks take a longer look at this and make sure everything is being done in compliance with the rent stabilization ordinances that we have in place. I'm very comforted by those ordinances, and it's made me very happy to be a resident of West Hollywood. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you'll take a little look at this, or have some of the folks that work for you make sure everything is proper with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michael King. Michael, please state your full name, residence, and you have 2 minutes to.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Michael King. I'm a resident of West Hollywood. Matters of housing seem unimportant on a day that our federal government has been taken over by a criminally insane man. But indeed, housing is even more important as our great nation disintegrates. Our city was founded on the idea of housing for all, and indeed our municipal code is structured to make it difficult for property owners to displace residents. We prohibit onerous rent increases, failure to provide contracted housing services, lack of maintenance, harassment of residents, that goes on. And yet, even though we have a critical housing shortage, some unscrupulous landlords are waiting for apartments to vacate and then convert them one by one to short-term housing, taking them off the housing market. Property owners claim their apartments, but with flexible leases to accommodate a transit style of the 21st century, residents end up with fewer options for housing, as these apartments are rented for at least double the rents commanded by other apartments. These short-term rental arrangements, they look more like fancy hotel rooms, don't pay transient occupancy tax, our city's #1 source of operating funds. With no on-site agent or manager, transients are able to allow anyone into the building and to disturb the residents without fear or repercussion. With the notably higher rents commanded by these units, landlords are incentivized to encourage long-term tenants to relocate and to vacate those apartments, and will worsen our critical homelessness issue. The loss of long-term housing and the residents of these homes contributes to the destruction of our neighborhoods and of the character of our city. We have been encouraging landlords to build multi-floor buildings with dozens and dozens of apartments in an attempt to alleviate the housing shortage, and yet we have in our midst landlords who are in a great rush to remove apartments from the rental market for improper and unethical purposes. I ask you, please put a stop to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Next, we have Adam. Adam, please state your full name, city of residence. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Great. Thank you. Hi, council members. My name is Adam Kroll. I'm a West Hollywood resident. I live over in Hayworth, near where the protest is going on today. First of all, I want to thank the city of West Hollywood and Mayor Horvath for standing with the protesters during this time and continue to amplify their message. I'm glad that our city stands with them. I first wanted to comment very quickly on item 2 that was on the agenda about electric charging. At a time like this, it does seem to be talking about electric cars, but we do know that in this broader context of the coronavirus, the COVID pandemic, that folks who are in areas with bad air have higher mortality rates. And quite frankly, our city just has pretty much failed to make progress on making charging available. In 2012, there were articles about like 8 or 10 chargers being built. The city still now just has another 8, I think, for 18. And that's pretty slow for 8. We know that the number of electric vehicles that are registered to city residents has increased significantly over time. And I think we also look at the building codes for new buildings to make sure that we're not requiring as few as like 10% of spots to have chargers. But I also want to leave to comment on some things that were said earlier that I find pretty bizarre. Councilmember D'Amico's comments about maybe we don't want to stop because it means our neighborhood is ruined. Quite frankly, I find that abhorrent considering what is going on in our current context and the fact that these are words that have been used to say very thinly veiled classist and racist things. Don't want to make accusations here, but I would like you to clarify what you mean by, subway stops would ruin our neighborhood. And I'd also like to remind everyone that, you know, the LA area didn't used to be zoned for so many single family homes. And we know the reason it was because white neighborhoods wanted to keep out multifamily buildings because they knew that would keep out people of color and Black people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next we have, hi, please state your name, city of residence, and you have 2 minutes to speak.
Yes, Alana Roche, resident of West Hollywood. Good evening, Mayor Lindsay Horvath, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council members. I am the co-chair of the Lesbian Gay Advisory Board, and I just would like to thank Mayor Lindsay Horvath for taking the time, the extra time today, to listen to myself and other citizens or residents of West Hollywood. You know, as a queer woman of color and a person that stands with Black Lives Matter movement, what I witnessed today was a peaceful protest that occurred at 4 p.m. on Lowell Avenue and Sunset Boulevard. And I just want to really thank you for not choosing fear. We really need compassionate leaders to understand the complexity of this movement. The protest today displayed a wonderful example of what the future could actually look like when law enforcement stands with us and protects us and not against us. So thank you for not moving the curfew to 4 p.m. and giving people the chance to peacefully protest. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker here. Please state your name, city of residence, and you have 2 minutes to speak under public comment.
Hi, thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Wes Miller. I'm a West Hollywood resident. I live on the east side, just a few blocks north, Melrose, where a lot of the activity was last night. I'm also an HIV clinical researcher, and I'm the director of Sex Workers Outreach Project LA. I just wanted to comment on 3B. I have, just looking over it, I have some concerns about if it's clear enough, if this is just, my understanding is it's not just for businesses, but that a lot of the administrative fee scheduling and all of that is also applicable to just like civilians. I have some, I'm concerned about it because, you know, like a $50 administrative fee can really mean financial devastation for people during this time. And, you know, in the spirit of collaborative public health, we really need to deprioritize like any punitive enforcement of civilians. And that's not to disregard the importance of the, you know, the social distancing guidelines at all, but more just to respect the more general sentiment that we need to really remove police from our public health interventions. This is an opportunity for us to affirm to community-based interventions and not increase policing of vulnerable communities. You know, I applaud the expansion of the Met, for example, as one strategy, but I feel like West Hollywood needs to be more strategic and clear that we understand that police presence in our, you know, public health interventions needs to be intentionally minimized if we want it to be effective. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for standing with the movement.
Thank you. Mayor, there are 2 additional speakers that I'm going to mute. I'm not quite sure if they want to speak under public comment, but we'll check.
Okay.
Hi, can you state your name, city of residence, and you have 2 minutes to speak under public comment, general public comment. Hello, are you there? I'll move on to the next person. Hi, please state your name, city of residence, and you have 2 minutes to speak on public comment.
Agenda item. Hi, hear me?
Yes, what item are you wanting to speak on?
It was 4B.
Okay, so I will put you back on hold until we get to item 4B.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes
There's just
public comment?
There's one more.
Okay.
Sorry, Mayor.
Comment. Hi, I'm Carl calling from City of West Hollywood, and I'm picking up on a couple of points that were made by people earlier about the short-term rental situations. just want to say, as a member of the city and as a renter, I'm concerned that short-term
Sir?
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so as a renter, I'm concerned that short-term rental management companies with complicit landlords will crowd out affordable housing inventory, which will make it harder for my business to hire local talent and harder for my creative friends who seek to put down roots in the community. Even more concerning is that the RSO tenant relocation fees will no longer as easily discourage premium earning short-term rentals with complicit landlords to pay to relocate renters who incidentally may be seeking their timely required maintenance and housing services, or be elderly or infirm, or as they are in my building. Worse is that short-term clients who defy their short-term rental agreements can start getting state tenant protections, a lingering situation that can darkly change the character of our city's buildings. Finally, facing gradual displacement in our building at a time when people are still being urged to definitely stay at home to keep themselves and their community safe from COVID-19 and our riots is real cause for alarm. And so I hope the council will protect all our confidence in the community of West Hollywood by not allowing short-term rental management companies to prevent the spirit of the Ellis Act by voting for a flat-out ban. Such a ban is possible if threatened tenants can learn more by city mailers and have a place to file claims for short-term rental violations at we.org. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, that is the final speaker.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Now turn to council member comments. Who would like to go first? Councilmember D'Amico.
Thank you. To the couple of folks who called in about Cynthia, I know that Mayor Pro Tem Heilman and I received a couple of emails about that thing, and they referred to Peter. So perhaps the matter, maybe David, can check on whether there was any outreach regarding that in the last week or 10 days since we received it, and if not, maybe see if we can't get that to happen before the next meeting. Adam had some question about the subway stop. I think my point was that by simply changing the zoning for a half mile from the subway stop doesn't necessarily solve the problem of people loving our subways. In fact, our city is so small that I think many of us are looking for a more nuanced response that really provides the kind of housing that all different kinds of people who want to live in our city can take advantage of. So I appreciate that you brought up a question about what is meant by that. And for me, what is meant by that is it might be to have a subway on La Cienega than to have one on San Vicente, if putting it on San Vicente means that all of West Hollywood West has to go away and turn into 5- and 7-story buildings, when La Cienega is already a commercial street and perhaps better prepared to accept the subway with multi-story neighborhoods adjacent. So these are complicated questions. Questions for me are questions of urbanism, and that's why I brought it up to the senator, because our city has excelled in providing the kind of housing that we are interested in providing: affordable housing, long-term affordable housing, and to keep our existing housing stock in place. But I thank you for bringing that up and for the other comments. With respect to tonight's agenda, I was contacted by a couple cannabis business owners, both existing and potentially new, and I expressed to all of them at the time they contacted me that I hadn't yet read the staff report, that I would read the staff report and make a decision based on what was in that report. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Member Meister.
Sure, thank you. First of all, in terms of attendance, I attended a virtual Southern California Association of Governments meeting in order to elect a chair and vice chair of the CEHD committee. Glad I didn't have to drive downtown for that. I want to thank Horvath for working with me on the additional construction and noise mitigation item. We do have people at home, working at home, studying at home. We're going to have some compromises with the usual goings on in a neighborhood in terms of construction, maintenance, tree trimming, and all of that. Also want to thank Councilmember Dan for co-sponsoring the legacy businesses item. It seems to be timely as staff is also working on a small business item, an item to businesses and legacy businesses in our city are unique and valuable. We have to do what we can to keep them in our city. I do have a few words I would like to say about what's going on right now. Frankly, I feel like we need to adjourn the memory of the United States of America, a country that we have such hope, optimism, and leadership under President Barack Obama. Every time our current president or any of our institutions minimalizes another Black or brown life, every time racism, sexism, homophobia, or transphobia rears its ugly head, every time criminal opportunists take advantage of real pain and suffering, our country's soul dies a little more. For those who don't know, the rate at which Black Americans are killed by police is more than twice that of white Americans. Systemic racism has for way too long been a part of US culture and is prevalent in long-standing institutions such as our justice system and education. For Eric Garner and George Floyd and all the Black Americans who were killed before and in between, we need to change. We all must be accountable. So perhaps we can send an adjournment motion to the current president cowering in the White House with the lights off and ask him to turn the lights on so that everyone can see the ugliness of racism and why Black Lives Matter is such an important movement to move us all forward. Please note that the actions that we took today were for the health and safety of all our residents, as well as our business community. That's our top priority. Thank you.
Councilmember Brand.
Thank you. I have a handful of comments, mostly related to COVID. I'd like to ask, I know David Wilson is here in lieu of Paul Aravallo. Paul's down on the streets monitoring what's happening in the city right now. I think it's time to move forward on the dog parks and to look at reopening those dog parks. We had them open initially. We had to close them back down, continue the slow reopen. I don't know how my colleagues feel. We've deferred authority to the city manager to make the decisions. I think the dog park should be the next part of the reopening of our park. I wanted to also say on the issue of masks and the administrative fees and the fines that we're using as a form of trying to comply with mask orders. I know that we tend to do things sensitively here in Hollywood, but a fee on somebody, as Mr. Sigmiller was saying, who's already unemployed, stressed out, struggling to get by, unable to pay rent, and suddenly getting slapped with an administrative fee, it could just be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think we need to be really careful about that. Mask on, mask off. The orders from the government have not been cleared, from the CDC to the governor to our own local county health officials. We've finally reached a place, I think, where there's general consensus. Masks are helpful. I'm hoping as we move forward in dealing with COVID that we exercise a little more common sense people rather than coming down on them with such police authority that making a bad situation even worse. That would be my input on the issue where we start fining people for not wearing a mask. The other issue I wanted to bring up are the 12-step meetings in the city of West Hollywood. It's curious because 12-step meetings happen in church basements, in restaurants, Rotary Club meeting rooms, and those 12-step meetings that have been happening in church basements are actually able to start opening now because churches are allowed to have people in them. And restaurants are allowed to occupy at 60% capacity and keep people apart and masked. And so those 12-step meetings are starting to happen there. It makes no sense to me that you can have 12-step meetings occurring in restaurants and church basements, but the two facilities that we have in the city of West Hollywood, the West Hollywood Recovery Center and the log cabin are still being prohibited from getting started. I know we've had numerous meetings between staff and the West Hollywood Recovery Center staff. I took a very close look at the governor's order about phase 2, and section 16 of those exempted operations that are allowed to move forward do include alcohol and drug treatment programs. And I would argue that our two facilities, which are 100% dedicated to alcohol and drug treatment and recovery, would probably fit under the existing order that the governor has issued. I think that the West Hollywood Recovery Center has the ability to make sure that people are masked when they enter, keeping chairs 6 feet apart, gauge temperatures, and at the same time, make sure the audio visual equipment is there so that Zoom becomes a basic necessity of all the meetings occurring at both facilities for those people with pre-existing health conditions or who are elderly, who don't feel safe yet getting out of house to attend a 12-step meeting. I've had some of these discussions already with recovery center people. They're ready to go. They're just looking for the city to give a green light. I've talked to city staff. City staff keeps saying we're waiting for the county, the governor. And I think what's happening, because 12-step meetings are unique, there's nobody in charge, there's no manager, they don't have a business model, they're not there for a profit, people pass the hat, they throw a dollar in. It's not going to fit into any of the traditional things that everybody's looking at in terms of reopen. But I think an argument can be made that under exempted operations under the governor's order, that our two facilities that are 100% committed to alcohol and drug treatment and recovery may exist and may fit under an existing order from the governor, and that we should be working with the county officer to see if our two facilities can open. We can have meetings in churches, restaurants. We can certainly do it, I think, the log cabin and the recovery center. Finally, I want to, a couple more things. I'm sorry. I want to thank Councilmember Meister for asking me to join her on the legacy business item that you all are passing tonight on consent. I was deeply disheartened to think that the Troubadour may actually be getting shut down because they're not able to make it. That's an example of a legacy business that's going to need some help, going to need some financial assistance. I hope that staff looks at low interest or no interest business loans, other opportunities. Losing our legacy businesses would, in my opinion, destroy a lot of the character of the complexion of the city of West Hollywood that makes us so unique. We need to be really careful that we don't lose them and suddenly find ourselves with a whole lot of businesses that make our city look like any other community in Southern California. I want to thank everybody for supporting the expansion of the BET-CEDIC contract. This was something that I talked about at a council meeting, I think about a year ago, even before COVID. And so it's nice to see it finally come to fruition. I want to thank Allison Regan and Christoph Schroeder and the others who've been working very diligently on this. There is a storm ahead. We know it's coming. We know when the eviction moratoriums expire that a lot of tenants are going to be in severe financial distress. Providing them with legal counsel before the 3-day notice, during the 3-day notice, through the unlawful detainer process is going to be really important, and hopefully an idea that will result in more settlements rather than more evictions. Finally, the last thing I want to say is to talk about the existing protests. While we're doing this, I'm watching my news reports. It looks like Hollywoo is getting sacked right now, unfortunately. And I'm really grateful to our Sheriff's Department, public safety people, and our city manager for protecting our residents. I'm glad my colleagues, we've actually been very unified here about protecting life and property within the city of West Hollywood. Listening, I'm hearing sirens go off and helicopters overhead. These are very strange times. Back when AB 101 got vetoed, I was the attorney for the protesters on Santa Monica Boulevard, and then Mayor Heilman was the person who got the sheriffs to clear the way so that we could march down Santa Monica Boulevard. I think that is a long history and part of our history as a city. We support protests. We support dissent. We support Black Lives Matter. We support anybody who has suffered from oppression. And we need to continue to do that. And at the same time, we have to focus our law enforcement resources on the antagonists, anarchists, white supremacists, others who would attempt to infiltrate the ranks of Black Lives Matter and supporters in order to create disturbance, anarchy, broken windows, and criminality. And we're giving our press, I think, the most tools that they can use to be sure to separate the wheat from the chaff, and to make sure that First Amendment rights are protected and public safety simultaneously. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Highland.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to my colleagues. I just have a couple of quick comments. Number one, the short-term rental issue that people have spoken about tonight. Councilmember Dominguez is correct. This is something that has been brought to our attention. I've already referred the matter to our housing department as well as our code enforcement department. They are looking into the legality of what is happening there. People who are still on the line, who are concerned about this, can call directly to our housing department. I was also texting with Corey Plank, who is aware of the situation and is available to help investigate what's going on there currently within the law. But the speakers clearly indicated one of the reasons why we need to adopt a ban on short-term rentals. It's further support for the issue that we've talked about of requiring leases to be for a longer term period than just a 31-day lease, which is what is happening at this building. Secondly, I want to thank my colleagues for bringing forward their item on construction mitigation. I hope that as staff looks at this, that they do so in a very careful manner. As my colleagues indicated, we do definitely need to protect people who are in their homes currently from the impacts of construction noise and the like. But we also need to recognize that some of our businesses are going to be putting in physical barriers to ensure physical operation and compliance with current regulations. Some of our businesses that are currently not operational have taken the opportunity to do improvements or repairs. So I think we need to be very careful in terms of how we assess construction impacts, that we don't force businesses to reopen only to close down to do construction that's necessary for them to reopen. And I know my colleagues understand that. I just wanted to share that with the staff. And finally, I think my colleagues have already expressed certainly our support for peaceful protest, and I want to thank the protesters as well for being out there and expressing the views that I think all of us have about the horrific events that occurred in Minneapolis. And I, especially for those of us who are not able to be out and not able to be in a public setting, I want to thank people for raising their voices in a peaceful way and trying to engage in constructive protest and dialogue. I also want to, of course, thank our public safety officials for their incredible work on Saturday, trying to differentiate, as Councilmember Duran said, between those who are engaged in lawful First Amendment activities and others who are engaged in criminal conduct. I think Seppi Shine mentioned that as well. We clearly need to differentiate, and I think everyone does, between those who are expressing views in a peaceful manner and in a lawful manner, and those who are engaged in criminal activity. And those people are, of course, not the same. And finally, I want to thank our public safety staff as well for the work tonight. And we haven't mentioned the incredible work of our facilities division, who were out today and yesterday surveying any damage that occurred in the city, helping businesses with boarding up, helping to remove graffiti that was put into our city. I want to thank them for being out there and for all the work that they're doing. And to all of our residents, thank you for your understanding, and please stay safe during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll turn to, I understand we have a couple more public comments. Madam City Clerk.
Yes, we have Genevieve Morrow. Genevieve, You have 2 minutes to speak under public comment.
Hello?
Hi, Genevieve.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Genevieve Morrill, President and CEO of Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Longtime listener, first-time caller. I always wanted to say that. Before I speak, I really speak in support of your urgency item, so I wasn't sure if this was the correct place to speak. But I first want to commend the council, our city manager, city staff for their tireless work and exhausting work that they've done for the pandemic, and now our public safety director and our for keeping us safe and making sure our business and residents don't suffer more harm from looters and vandals during what should be peaceful demonstrations in honor of racial inequities and the unfortunate murder of George Floyd. We also want everyone to know that we also stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. In terms of the urgency order, businesses are struggling and we really need your help. Staff has submitted for your approval some important plans and process to help expand footprints for our restaurant establishments. This temporary ordinance will help provide the additional occupancy needed to offset the county's request and achieve a viable base for the business to cover its operational costs to open, staff up, and operate. And at the same time, may give comfort to those venturing to dine out for the first time to be outdoors yet socially distanced in the midst of COVID. We are extremely appreciative to the city's willingness to be flexible and courageous in trying new ideas in this new normal to help support business and the community it serves. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Genevieve. And then we have Larry. Larry, you have 2 minutes to speak.
Hello, everybody. I hope everybody is safe. Many of our small businesses are boarded up and many of us are scared. That's probably how George Floyd felt. Scared. This is how many African Americans feel when a cop pulls them over. Scared. That's Black Lives Matter. It's how a trans kid feels when they are bullied. That's why all lives matter. Today, bike riders rode past the shop as we were boarding up. One expressed, "Boarded up. We are coming tonight." And we locked down the heartbeat of our LGBT community. There is a banner over my shop that says, "Our pride is season. Our pride all year round." That banner is still up and our flags are still waving. Because you can threaten our community, but why? Black, white, Asian, or Latino. Everybody is welcome under the rainbow. So I will depart today with the words of Dr. King, who share a birthday and live with inspiration. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold, sleeves into the palace of justice. In the process of being our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct a struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to generate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal.
Thank you, Larry. That was our last speaker, Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to thank all of our staff who made today possible. I know it was extra coordination given everything that's going on right now, and all of our leadership and our staff who are helping to keep us safe right now, keep us informed, and keep us connected. What I know is what's going on right now affects all of us. It's not just one community or one neighborhood or one demographic, and it's touching everybody. And that's the point. And we know that while we adjourn tonight in memory of George Floyd, there are many other lives that have been lost. Right here in Los Angeles area, Alicia Thomas is one person I want to lift up tonight also. And the point of all of this is it's got to stop. And we all part of the solution. We all have to be engaged. We all have to do our part to engage in this conversation. And, today we also kick off Pride Month. It's June, and normally this is a very different kind of time in our city for us to come together as community and to not just accept or tolerate, but to celebrate true diversity of our community, celebrate our LGBTQ family in all of its glorious colors and in all of its beauty. As was mentioned earlier, we do know that Stonewall was a riot, and no one is equal unless everyone is equal. And while we are certainly supporting violence and vandalism, what we know is that we need people to care as much about Black people dying as we do about damage to property. And I think what we need right now is a lot of change, a lot of conversation, which can change hearts and minds and open us up to lasting change that we can in our community and throughout the region, hopefully our country. I know that last week after this happened, I had a conversation with our captain, and there was a discussion at West Hollywood Sheriff's Station about what it means to be a bystander versus an upstander, and how to engage as a partner when you see somebody inflicting violence and not using proper protocols and use of force. They talked about how we address peaceful protesters, and I'm glad that this past weekend there was no use of force against peaceful protesters in West Hollywood. And I think there's certainly a lot more room to grow and do better. We are checked in and conscious now, and hopefully we all stay that way to challenge ourselves to grow and learn more. This isn't just a handful of days and then we're going back to normal. This is hopefully a change that lasts a lifetime, and we're all a part of it right now. And I'm grateful to everybody who's made that commitment to make that change. I'll turn it over now to David Wilson, who's sitting in for our city manager tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Horvath, council members. I just want to follow up a few of the questions that you all had on the meeting. With regard to the short-term rental at Cynthia, code compliance and our rentalization department is working on that, as Mayor Pro Tem Howman mentioned. We will provide an update later this week. The zone text amendment regarding long-term, the definition of long-term rentals is planning to go to the Planning Commission at June 18th meeting. Then we expect to have it come to council at the July 22nd meeting. Regarding the dog parks, our facilities staff has a plan for the dog parks to open later this week. With respect to the 12-step meetings, our facility staff, Steve Campbell and Collins, is meeting with the recovery groups tomorrow, and they plan to get the key to the building. And we're working with the city attorney's office and the county with respect to allowing the use of the building. I believe that was all the questions. Thank you.
Councilor Miko.
David, I had a question about the, I had a question, and so did Councilmember Heilman, about the specific property on Cynthia and their short-term rental. So I think what we both might have expected is that either code compliance or Corey or Peter would be looking into that, would be able to give us an answer in 2 weeks.
Yes, they can provide an answer either 2 weeks or sooner if you prefer, but we can, they are looking into it currently and will be providing an update.
Anything else that we missed? Okay. Madam City Clerk, what is the fiscal impact of our consent agenda tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. The fiscal impact with the addition of 5A, 5C, 5E, 5F, and with the level of 2F is $527,360 in expenditures, $9,576 in potential revenue, and $0 in waived fees.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember D'Amico?
Yes.
Councilmember Duran?
Aye.
Councilmember Meister?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman? Mayor Horvath.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much. And now I believe we are turning to our urgency item 2 is the first one we would like to address. This is the resolution ratifying Executive Order 2020-5. Madam City Clerk, is there anything you need us to read into the record before we address this item?
No, I think the city attorney is ready to provide the report.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Lauren Singer.
Good evening. The first thing I wanted to know before we talk about urgency item number 2 is that both urgency items were posted on the city's website on a revised agenda. So anyone at home who wants to see all of the documents related to both the business measures for public right-of-way dining and this urgency item related to the executive order number 2 can find them on the city's website under a revised agenda, so you can read along and see what has been added to the agenda. We add items to an agenda when something has come to the city's attention after the posting of an agenda and requires immediate action. So that can be discussed a little more for urgency item number 1 later on in the meeting. Urgency item number 2 is a resolution ratifying an executive order that the city manager adopted over the weekend. So as has been discussed tonight by the mayor, Allen, the public speakers, and all the council members, we're all aware of the peaceful protests that have been going on throughout the region and the country in response to the murder of George Floyd, and also the unrest that has also been experienced throughout the region. And so on Saturday, after an escalation in the Fairfax district and violence and disturbances at the sheriff's station, the city manager adopted an executive order declaring a state of emergency, and that also authorized him to implement a curfew. The declaration of a state of emergency, as we saw with COVID, must be ratified within 7 days. So that is why it was added to your agenda tonight for the city council to ratify that decision to declare a state of emergency. And as we've also seen throughout the COVID emergency, then the executive orders of the city manager are also brought before the council as soon as possible for ratification. So, so both the city manager's order and the resolution to ratify that order have been posted on the agenda. And as you'll see from those documents, the city's really trying to respond in a way that respects Hollywood's values. As Councilmember Duran, I think, noted, you know, it's this really balance between First Amendment protection and protecting the public safety. And so over the weekend, the city manager adopted a curfew that was 8 p.m. Saturday night and Sunday night. As every resident in Los Angeles County knows, the county adopted a countywide curfew for 6 p.m. Last night and this evening. And the curfew that was locally tonight was 4 p.m. So while you're being asked to ratify these decisions tonight, I just want to make it very clear that the time for a curfew, if it's necessary, is reevaluated every day. And it's based on many factors, and the city's values, and information that we have from our law enforcement, which we know is changing by the minute. And so, you know, I want everyone at home to realize that that imposing a curfew is something that the city takes seriously, and we balance both of our city values and the need for public safety when we do that. And if you read the order that was adopted over the weekend, I think it really says it really well when it says the city joins the protesters and others in their outrage regarding the murder of George Floyd by police officers. The city seeks to be an ally in the fight against racial injustice and dismantling systemic racism. The city respects the rights to peacefully assemble and protest, but with liberty comes responsibility. Violence directed at persons and other acts that threaten public safety, including setting fires, throwing objects, and threatening public safety, endangers innocent persons and first responders charged with keeping the peace. Looting, fires, graffiti, broken windows, other damage and disturbance occurred in Los Angeles, West Hollywood, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Long Beach, and other areas throughout the county over the past weekend. And so that formed the basis for both the emergency order and the curfew. So with that, the Executive Order 2020-5, which was revised today, dated June 1st, and a resolution ratifying that emergency order is before you tonight for approval.
Okay, Madam City, do we have any speakers on this item?
We do not.
Okay, do we have any questions from council or discussion? Otherwise, if not, I'd entertain a motion.
So I'll second it.
Okay,
I
so
moved.
there's.
I raised my hand to move it.
Got it. Councilmember D'Amico made the motion, Mayor Pro Tem Heilman with the second. City Clerk.
Councilmember D'Amico,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran,
Aye.
Councilmember Meister,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman,
Aye.
Mayor Horvath.
Aye.
The item passes.
Thank you very much. And now we'll move on to our public hearings. We will address the other urgency item a little later in our agenda. Public hearing, our first public hearing is item 3A, and that is proposed fee resolution for fiscal year 2020-21. Madam City Clerk, how was this noticed?
This item was published and posted as required by law.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing. And do we have any speakers on this item?
No public comment for this item.
Okay, and do we have any questions from my colleagues? Do we need a report? Okay, if not, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we're closing the public hearing and moving the item. Madam City Clerk.
Was that moved by Mayor Pro Tem Heilman and second by Councilmember D'Amico?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember D'Amico. Councilmember Duran.
Aye.
Councilmember Meister.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
Aye.
Mayor Horvath.
Aye.
The item passes.
Thank you very much. And now we will move on to item 3B, a resolution of the City Council of the City of West Hollywood ratifying emergency measures and recent executive orders, adopting enforcement provisions related to executive orders and public health measures, and amending the master resolution for fiscal year 2019-20 to add violations of emergency orders to Schedule D to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and additional emergency response measures. Madam City Clerk, how was this item noticed?
This item was posted and published as required by law, and I believe we have one public comment for this item.
Wonderful. I'll open the public hearing. And do any of my colleagues need a report on this item? Okay, we'll take the public comment.
I believe we have Karen Keith. Karen, are you there? Karen? She's there and I have her unmuted.
Is this me?
Yes. Hi, Karen.
Hey, sorry, I was listening in the other room and the feed online is slower. So anyway, good evening. I'm Karen O'Keefe from the West Hollywood Bicycle Coalition, and I'm here to encourage the City Council to adopt Executive Order Safe Streets 2023, paragraph G. But I'd urge the Council to also go further. The executive order is really limited. It's limited to streets that have multifamily housing and that have signs at both ends. And I urge it also specifies about 5 different streets or segments of streets that it would apply to. Those all either only 1 block or in one case 2 or 3 blocks. This is a very short area, so if people have room to take a walk or take a bike ride, this would be a really, really short section for people to use. I checked out both all of the 5 locations in West Hollywood and the LA slow streets over the weekend, and the LA one goes for 2.5 miles, and that allows, to actually use it. So I just urge us to, the city to adopt the executive order, but use larger segments and hopefully also implement the B Greenway promptly. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Mayor, that was our last speaker.
Wonderful. And do we have questions or comments about this item? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Moved by Duran, seconded by Heilman.
No, I wasn't seconding. I was raising my hand. I have comments.
Oh.
And I have comments also.
Oh, okay. I misinterpreted your hand raising. Let's go to questions first. Or comments. We'll go to Councilor Brand first.
Thank you, Mayor. I generally support this item. My comment already about the administrative citation on that. But I want to say I have my doubts about the street closures. I understand the reasons why, but I actually think that our public sidewalks are more than adequate to accommodate people. And I don't think that shutting down the streets are going to have the intended effect of encouraging people to come out and actually distance themselves. I think it'll cause more inconvenience to our residents rather than provide relief. So I don't support the closure of the streets on this side. Everything else I do support. I needed to make that comment.
Thank you. Councilmember Meister?
Sure. The Slow Streets program, I kind of feel like now that we're opening things up again, that maybe it's something that we need to do. And it's something that we do want to look at. I think that we should be reaching out to the communities in which those streets are, because I have gotten some, feedback that people are like, why are you doing this? And we don't need you to do this. So I would prefer not to include that in this item, and just direct staff to either to reach out to those neighborhoods to see if this is really something that we need to do. But quite frankly, I think at this point in the game, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, Councilmember D'Amico?
I'm ready to speak.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Heilman?
I left myself and
I have some of the same concerns as my colleagues expressed. I think our time and our staff's time would be better spent trying to get our parks reopened in a safe way. And I share Karen O'Keefe's concern that these really are not spaces for people to bike. They're not long enough for it. I'd rather us use the time to look at ways that we could connect with a network of streets in LA where people could be using those streets for biking in a safe way, rather than going into our residential neighborhoods and picking a block here and there. It just doesn't seem to be a solution that is addressing a real problem in the community. So I know it's a nice thought, and some other communities have done it, but it does seem like it makes sense given the fact that we are now moving into a phase where other things can reopen.
Councilmember D'Amico.
So I can go away with my colleagues about the slow streets. I think on the one hand, maybe I should have asked Lauren about this earlier. I mean, it's within 500 feet of my house, and closing the street for this seems like a perfectly good way to test what really goes on, how people might feel about it, and it's a citywide program, so it really isn't much conflict or any. But I know a couple of my neighbors don't quite get it, but often that's how change comes. You don't understand it, and then you live with it, and then you can't imagine having it. Go either way. The question that I can't seem to answer for myself is that the administrative fee change, and what if I understand that we're changing this to a $50 ticket. Is that right? No, then I really don't understand what that is. I need someone to explain it.
Lauren Langer?
Yeah, I know that Danny Rivas is on the line and can probably speak to the code enforcement fines a little bit better. That is an administrative fee. The penalties are as set out in the schedule, which is $1,000, $2,000, and $5,000 per violation. But these are really geared towards, the main purpose of this item is geared towards businesses as they reopen, to give the city code enforcement staff the tools to ensure compliance with the county health orders, the specific rules the county is putting in place to make sure that they're operated appropriately. And right now, a violation of a county order is actually a criminal misdemeanor. So this is actually taking it out of the criminal realm and moving it over to the administrative citation process, which is much more in line with most of our code enforcement activities in the city, which come with outreach, notification, and working with businesses and notice. So it's actually more in line with our existing code enforcement policies and practices. And I see that Mr. Rivas has joined, so I'm going to let him speak a little bit more to the need for it.
Danny, can you just address these two things while you're speaking? So a group of 3 people walking down the street without masks, and then those same 3 people at a restaurant having dinner, the restaurant itself with 9 people, 1 table of those other 3 people. I just trying to wrap my head around how we want to use this going forward.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember D'Amico. Danny Rivas, Code Compliance Manager for the City of West Hollywood. So in reference to your first example, code enforcement staff actually is not engaging in residents that are walking down the street. So that process is currently being handled by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. So they will continue to provide education to folks that are not wearing facial coverings. So we wouldn't be utilizing the administrative citations for a specific reason. To answer your second question about the scenario of residents that are sitting down in a restaurant. So as Langer mentioned, we would be doing extensive outreach. And so prior to issuing any sort of administrative citation, what we would do was be issuing them a warning notice, which would require that the resident, the business, manager on site or the owner would have to make corrections within a 30-minute time frame. And if that did not get cured, then at that point, we would move forward with the administrative citations.
So really, this is really targeted at making sure our businesses are complying, and the setting at $1,000. Is that because that's similar to similar other kinds of infractions, like over capacity? They're supposed to have 99 people and they have 120. You give them $1,000 fine, that sort of thing.
Yeah, great question. So what the assistant attorney had mentioned too is that currently the penalty is a criminal citation. So the criminal citation provides 1 or 2 avenues. One being that they would be having to pay a fine of $1,000 or potentially being imprisoned for 6 months in jail. So we looked at our fee schedule, and Schedule D starts at that $1,000 fee, which seemed to be more appropriate, as well as the fact that we are providing that warning notice prior to issuing that.
Okay.
All right. Does that answer your question sufficiently, Councilmember D'Amico?
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a majority of the council who wants to do something about the slow streets. I think that it's an important experiment for us to try and get right. It sounds like even the people who are interested in it don't think that it's not quite right as it is right now. But I do know, and the slow streets are near my neighborhood that happen to be in LA, but are constructed in much the same way as they are in other neighborhoods in our city. They are great to be able to walk down and kind of slow down. So is there something, I know you have expressed opinion about it. Is there something you want to see different? Do you just want to take it out? What do you want to do? Lauren, Councilmember Meister.
Yeah, you can call me. I would say that, look, this is part of our traffic calming program. So why don't we just, have staff make that part of traffic calming, to look at that as a possible option in some form. but I just don't think it's ready for prime time yet. So I'd like to see more, again, more feedback from residents who are affected. And I think, look, if it calms traffic, that's wonderful. But let's use the same types of testing and procedures that we're doing now by going into the neighborhood, getting some feedback.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman, I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah, I think the truth is right now we don't really have a lot of traffic. The one thing I would suggest that if we want to move forward with some kind of experiment, maybe we allow staff to create one-day pop-ups and go from neighborhood to neighborhood and use that as an opportunity to do outreach to the neighborhood, provide information, resources to people within that specific neighborhood. I think that would be a better use of our time. I'm not going out much. When I go out, I have no problem walking on the sidewalk and socially distancing. And if necessary, I can walk into the street, but there really isn't a lot of traffic even on my street. And I live on La Cienega. So I think this is, for me, not a good idea to move forward with it as it's currently constructed.
Lauren Langer, you wanted to weigh in?
I just wanted to let you know we're sort of limited on how many staff people are on the meeting. Planning and Development Services Director John Kehoe wanted me to report to the council that the Willie Greenway is in the works. It was raised by one of the commenters earlier and will be coming to the city council later on this summer. And it's part of the bike and pedestrian master plan that the Planning and Development Services Department is implementing. So that's one.
And do you know when later this summer it's coming?
He just said later this summer. If I get that information, I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, I think I was gonna. Yeah, Councilmember Tran.
Sorry, Mayor. Did you chime in? You haven't chimed in yet.
Well, I weighed in on the slow streets, but that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. My personal opinion is we should just take it out. I think it's really important to keep things simple for people right now, and I just don't think it's going to work. The other thing I wanted to say on the issue of the fines, I heard what Mr. Rivas said about giving businesses warnings and needing to have some enforcement mechanism to comply. The reality is on a misdemeanor of business, nobody's going to jail. The district attorney is going to work out probation fines. Nobody goes to jail on a business citation. So I don't think that's a realistic fear. I'm okay with us, giving repeat warnings to business before we start hitting them with $1,000, $2,000, or $5,000 fines. They're all struggling so much right now. The thought of imposing a fine of any sort, to me, I think we're working against ourselves. And as long as Mr. Rivas is telling me, assuring me they're going to give me a warning before they start slapping people with fines up, I'll feel a little better. I'm not comfortable with the issue of the mask, though, because there's nothing that pulls the masking out of the scheme around fines and penalties. And from what I'm understanding, Mr. Rivas has just reported, the fine is $1,000. You can warn people about masking repeatedly, and if they keep violating it, we're going to hit a resident with $1,000 fine. That's the minimum. That to me is not right. I know we're trying to get people to comply, but I think we need a lot more honey here rather than stick. And hitting people when they're already financially suffering, I just can't imagine putting my head around that and voting for it. So those are my comments about the mask and the businesses.
Danny, is that correct that it's a $1,000 fine if you fail to comply with wearing masks?
Yes, Mayor, it is.
Okay.
That would be the first offense.
Okay. That's per resident or per business?
No, that wouldn't be issued to the resident. That would be issued to the business owner or the business manager, whoever's responsible there on site.
Okay.
Mayor, I'm prepared to move the item with the deletion of the slow streets program.
Okay. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Meister.
Are you willing to parade out the slow program and the citation so we can have a separate vote or maybe even additional separate discussion?
Sure, I'm willing to do that. So my motion would be to approve all of this except the citation and slow street at this time. And then we can come back and do separate motions on those.
Okay, Councilmember Meister, are you comfortable with that change? And are you at a comment?
Well, so to be clear, there's two resolutions before you, one of which, the first one is ratification of all the emergency orders. It's attachment C, I don't have a resolution number. But we can remove section G, 2G, from the ratification of emergency order 2020-3, that's the Slow Streets program. You want to remove that from the approval, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. The administrative citation is a separate resolution, so we can have a separate discussion on how the council wants to handle that topic.
Okay. So with that, we'll do a roll call vote on the first motion and then address the items after.
Okay, Councilmember D'Amico,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran,
Aye.
Councilmember Meister,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman,
Aye.
Mayor Horvath.
Aye.
That portion is approved.
Okay, now we'll move on to the citation.
Can I get, I'm sorry to belabor this, but I'm not entirely sure based on what Danny said. My understanding is that individual residents walking on the street, that's being handled by the sheriffs. And so what we're dealing with tonight is how our code enforcement will be enforcing against businesses that are required to have their employees masked and they're not allowed to have customers in without masks, and they're required to have social distancing and the like. So correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, this matter is really dealing with the enforcement against businesses.
Mayor Pro Tem Hellman, it is, as well as construction sites. Yes.
Okay, so we're not really even addressing the issue of how sheriffs are going to enforce for residents walking on the sidewalk or in the parks. Lauren?
Yeah, I just want to clarify because it's set up in two separate parts. So right now, an emergency order issued during this period of emergency, if someone violates that, it is a misdemeanor. Additionally, if someone violates a county health order, also a misdemeanor. So what this item is trying to do is make both violation of a local emergency order and certain provisions of the county health order subject to our administrative citations process, which has, notice requirements, the citation, and an option to appeal if someone doesn't feel that they were cited fairly. So that's also available to somebody through this process. So it's all of the orders that Paul has been issuing as the Director of Emergency Services and some limited business-focused provisions of the county health orders. But I think what Danny was saying is he doesn't intend to be citing residents for not having a mask. And I also want to point out that the county sheriffs that have been driving around the city actually have disposable masks in their car that they've been passing out to residents who don't have. So that's part of their outreach effort is if someone doesn't have a mask, they're giving them a disposable mask. It hasn't been dealt with through citations.
Okay, Councilmember Meister.
Yeah, just a question for Dan, just for clarification. So if we didn't vote for this, the LA County Sheriff still has the ability to cite, and it's actually a misdemeanor, which would end up, could be up to 6 months in jail or $1,000 fine. Is that right?
That is correct.
So this just gives you the ability to give the citation instead, and it does not, it doesn't have with it jail term. It's just basically the way we do citations with other instances where you give a warning, and if then the warning, if they don't follow the warning and they don't correct the situation, then that's the fine.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
With that understanding, I'm prepared to move it because I think it is actually a better system to have it go through the administrative process rather than have it filed in criminal court against somebody.
I'd second.
Okay, that's a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Just, Mayor, I have another question for Mr. Rivas, since we're hunkering down just a bit. If a group of residents walk into a restaurant masked and then they unmask to eat, I assume that's not a violation, correct?
That is correct. The way that the most recent revised order from the county states is that they're recommending that folks, when not eating, wear a facial covering. To your point, yes, they would not be interested.
And as a further example, if a group of friends decides to meet Abby to have breakfast or dinner, and they sit down 10 of them, we don't know whether they live together or don't live together, but clearly they're not 6 feet apart. If there's at a table of 10, is that a violation?
No. So that would not be something that we would get into. The county health order does provide that you have members of the same household, right, that should be sitting down and dining in. But that is not something that would be getting granular on.
Right. And then one last question, and then I'm ready to vote on it. Are we doing any education efforts with our businesses in terms of you fall in the bucket or you don't fall in the bucket? Because there's so much information out there from state, county, and local. I think people are looking for clear direction. Are we going to do any work with the Chamber of Commerce or some other way of letting our businesses know whether they fall under the ordinance or not?
Absolutely, Councilmember Duran. And we actually already started doing that as soon as the most recent order came out. We not only have been going out and having field officers out a number of different packets that outline the protocol, specifically what restaurants need to do. They've been going out, visiting, making contact with not only the owners, but the business managers, handing them these protocols to follow, answering any questions. And so we started doing that earlier this week and last week to a certain extent. And we'll continue to do that, and certainly having conversations with the chamber to make sure that we're getting the word out, and then working with our communications department in terms of doing a press release as well.
All right, thank you.
May I? I guess I would just say that I can't support the item as it is, and it would be to know if it were up to me, I would say we're going to ask you to give warnings for 2 weeks or a month. If you find that you giving warnings and 30 minutes later nothing is different, or you come back in 2 hours and it's back to the same, I would be interested in that. So I guess what I'm interested in is if a month there are given any $1,000 citations, and how many warnings that day or that week or et cetera were given. Because I think we, as I think John said it, but if he didn't, I'll pretend he did. I just think we need more carrots than sticks, and threading the needle of getting a business open is going to be pretty tricky. I think that's probably said enough. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the item, and further discussion. Okay, Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. And for the record, are we adding the request to come back with a month, Pro Tem Heilman, since you were the one who made the motion?
Yeah, I think it's fair. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the agenda. It could just be a report to us through email, but I think it's a good idea for us to have a sense of how many citations are actually being issued. I think our business community is largely going to want to comply because these are the requirements under which they can operate. So I like the idea of getting a report. It could be on the agenda as just a receive and file.
Okay, and with that, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember D'Amico,
Yes, I mean, no, sorry. Yes, no, I'm voting.
okay, Councilmember Duran,
No.
Councilmember Meister,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman, Mayor Horvath.
Yes.
The motion passes 3-2.
It's
I'm
an
sorry.
urgency ordinance that requires.
Oh, so we have to have 4. I apologize for that. We have to have it 4 ayes.
Oh, okay. So
You know,
is there?
So it
No,
doesn't.
Mayor, I could probably end up supporting this if we agreed to suspend enforcement for 90 days. We need some buffer. We need some room. We're just trying to get started back up. We don't need to be coming down on people when these times are so difficult. So there was an idea of passing this, but suspending enforcement for 90 days or 120 to give everybody an opportunity to breathe. I'd probably be okay with it. It just feels like, again, like I said earlier, we're just working against ourselves when we're doing our best to get businesses back up.
And I share your concern about businesses that are just starting back up, but I think, as I understand the intention of this, what I don't want us to become is, the Ozarks, where everybody's out, and the thing on social media that everybody's talking about is, people going out of control at our local businesses. And I think the intention behind this is to give some tools to our code enforcement to actually be able to enforce that. And I don't think our businesses want to be, a pariah on social media either. So I think we're talking in sort of in absolutes, when in reality, what's going to happen is a little bit different. And so I think we need to give code enforcement some tools to actually make sure that when businesses open, they're complying with the orders from the county, so they're able to actually open and keep people safe.
Would my colleagues consider making the first violation $250?
I'm okay with that.
I just don't want to be the council member in a city where somebody with 25,000, followers is saying he's finding me $1,000 because a table was there and then their friends came and they moved the table over and now, it's a mess. I think I'm obviously making a point about a fictitious moment, but the idea is that I think we need to have a more gradual but serious enforcement of the county's opening of our restaurants, and let our code compliance folks issue warnings and perhaps something in the range of $250 to me seems more reasonable.
Okay, is that a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay.
Can I ask Danny for his reaction to that?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hellman. Most of the situations that we've been dealing with, for the most part, I'll start off by saying all the businesses have been doing a great job. And we have an excellent rapport with the business community. However, there have been a couple of businesses, a handful of businesses that we have repeatedly gone out to, both not only from a code compliance perspective, but even having to gain assistance from the sheriff's department. It isn't a matter of them not being educated, them not knowing what protocols, and I can assure you that we're not going to have code enforcement officers that are going to be standing looking at the specific distancing requirements of the tables, although that is a requirement under the county health officer order. But when we have folks that are queuing in front of the business, that are consuming alcoholic beverages and having other factors that are creating crowds of folks, I'm not sure that a $250 fine is going to communicate the importance to manage that and hold these businesses accountable.
Danny, excuse me, Danny, if I understood you, that was if they gave them a warning and they cure that within 30 minutes, you would give them a fine. And if they don't change their behavior, can't you give them the next level of fine, which would be $1,000 the same night, or the next time the next day, Saturday, or I mean, isn't that how that works?
Yes, it is a progressive fee schedule. So yes, we could issue a first citation, as you mentioned, 250, and then they cure it after 30 minutes or the following day. We could jump to that second offense fee schedule.
Okay, so it sounds like the motion is to insert a step after the warning before the $1,000 fine of a $250 fine. Am I understanding the motion correctly?
Yes.
And there's a second from Councilmember Duran. Any? That's how they understand their motions. What? So
No, that's fine. I'm just trying. I want to make sure that what's proposed is appropriately reflected in the documents that are approved tonight.
Understood.
So that's just why I want to take a pause for a quick second.
Okay. Well, we have a couple more council members to get to. Councilmember or Mayor Elman, do you have any further comment on that?
No.
Okay, Councilmember Meister.
I have no comment.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't give you enough time there.
So, Annie, would that be a different schedule?
Yes, it would. That would be an entirely different schedule, and I would have to look at the different schedules to see if we had one that met 250. We can tell you right now, we definitely do not have one from 250 to 1,000.
We might need to rework documentation and bring it back on 15 in order to accomplish that. If that's not one of our existing schedules on the fee resolution,
So what happens then in terms of enforcement between now and then for businesses that would like to reopen?
They can reopen. They would just be subject. They have to follow. They always have to follow the rules that the county sets, and they would be subject to citation by the sheriff's department for a misdemeanor if they were violating the county health orders. But again, as you all point out, there's a huge noticing and information component to this. As everyone reads these new orders, they're coming out every day. They've got this guidance with them. So I think all businesses are eager to learn what the county expects of them and hopefully do the right thing and operate appropriately.
So if we don't make this change tonight, it will go to a misdemeanor. But if we do make this change tonight, they'll be fined $1,000. Right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Councilmember Meister, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to ask why this can't be a new fee. I mean, it's not like, we're COVID in our fee schedule, hopefully not forever. Is there any reason why this can't be a new fee and that we can approve tonight? The COVID fee, the COVID public health fee?
I actually wonder if Lorraine is still on because she's the one who's most expert in our fee resolution and the one that was, just
she's on
the item before this.
I see her on the meeting.
Mm-hmm. Sorry to put anybody on the spot.
Lorena, are you there?
Or
here she comes. She comes. Hold on, she just unmuted herself.
Okay. Yes. Sorry.
That's okay.
What was the question?
The question is, are there other fee schedules that reflect what the council wants to do? Most of the violations fall under Schedule A, B, C, D. I don't know if there's more. The question is how to deal with a different fee.
So Danny's code enforcement has a separate administrative fee schedule that lists all various fees that they have. Since the council just adopted that and approved it, but that one starts until July 1st.
Right.
We would have to make some changes to that schedule if it's gonna continue.
Understood after July.
Councilmember Duran.
Let me ask a process question. If it's got to go over for 2 weeks, if we renotice it for 2 weeks, then you won't need 4 votes. The majority, you can pass it with 3 votes in 2 weeks. If you want to pass it. So I think we either adopt it tonight. We are the council. I mean, the fees are set by us.
Yeah.
This is coming from us, we are the legislative body. The fact that it doesn't fit on somebody's chart or diagram is irrelevant. You amend the chart. We're passing a law. We're passing an ordinance here. Create a new fee schedule if you want it passed tonight. I don't care if it's on the diagram or not. So either we pass it tonight with $250, $1,000, $5,000 level, or the council majority can continue it in 2 weeks and you can pass it on 3 votes.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that you put in the amounts. It may not fit perfectly into this resolution. We can always clean up the 2020, 2021 resolution. But then at least Danny gets his authority that he needs tonight.
Okay, so we can adjust it. The motion is to include an incremental step between warning and the proposed $1,000 fine of a $250 fine.
That's right.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and Lauren Langer, you have everything you need to. Danny Rivas, you have a.
Sorry, just for clarification. So, Laura, are we saying that the first fine will be $250, and then the second will be $1,000, and then the third would be at what amount? Typically, our fine schedules are set at 3 different levels, and then each one of those in all of our administrative citation schedules also has a $50 administrative fee to them as well.
It's my assumption that we were doing what the mayor carefully described, which is just inserting a $250 step. The administrative fees would be the same, the $1,000 would be the same, the $5,000 would be the same, all other functions would be the same. It's just that you're going to tell business person Y that she is, in trouble. If she doesn't change it, you're going to give her a citation. If she doesn't change it, 10:30 and you started at 7, then you're gonna give her a $1,000 one, and then because the next day you're gonna give her a $5,000 one.
So I think we're all clear on the motion. Lauren Langer, are you clear on what you need so we can make this happen?
Yes.
Okay. So Madam City Clerk, we'll go ahead with a vote.
Okay, Councilmember Rico.
Yes.
Councilmember Duran.
Aye.
Councilmember Meister.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
Aye.
Mayor Horvath. Motion passes.
All right, and so now the final piece of this is the slow street. I know that we took that piece out of this, and I'm interested in still exploring this as an experiment. I'm not sure that there are votes to do so I'm trying to see where there is a.
This needs 4 votes also, is that correct?
Yep.
There's only 2 in favor, so I'm thinking we should just make a motion and let it go, and then it will fail, right? And we can move on.
Well, this was just the ratification of the city manager's order and then a side conversation on direction of the slow streets.
Okay, so I think there wasn't about how to move forward. There was mentioned that slow streets could be incorporated into something that's coming up later in the summer. So maybe whatever comes back to us later in the summer can also have the possibility of expanding to include some other options in addition to Willoughby.
Yeah, Mayor.
Yes.
Horvath? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the plan is to come back to the June 17th meeting, the Transportation Commission for the Willoughby Greenway.
Okay.
And then the council in July for that as well. So we can explore other, if the council wishes, we can explore other options as part of that Transportation Commission and the City Council.
All right, very good. So we'll, if that's okay, we can include direction Councilmember D'Amico.
And I just want to say, Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Heilman's suggestion of pop-ups, I'm very much in favor of. If that is suggestion of pop-ups, I'm much in favor of. If that's something that's not too staff intensive, can be included in whatever is brought forward later this summer.
I actually think that will, I'm sorry, does anybody, I don't want to just jump in, but I think that's going to actually be much more staff intensive to try and inform a neighborhood of something that isn't going to last. And part of bike riding, you develop habits and encourage ridership by, people knowing and trying it out. And so if it's going to exist, temporary, I'm not sure that's going to work. We could include it as direction for staff to explore as part of what comes to transportation if that is the will of the council. Member Meister.
I'm concerned about pop-ups only because of timing. I mean, we don't know where we're going to be with COVID. So I that I would be trying to encourage more gatherings of people around one event, in one event for this. I mean, I think we can say, look, we can incorporate it in our bigger plan of traffic calming for the city and for specific neighborhoods, but I just don't see it as an urgency.
Okay, so we'll give that direction to incorporate. Well, it seems like there are not four to move forward with some. So you've heard our discussion on this aspect of it. We'll just leave this part of it out and move. We need to close the public hearing, though. We need to do that because we haven't done that yet. So, all right.
Second.
All right. Do we need to vote on that, City Clerk, or is that one we can do by acclamation?
By acclamation, if you were just giving them direction through your comments.
Great. So we have our direction. The public hearing is now closed. We'll move on to item 3C, which is the review of the solid waste rate increase for integrated solid waste management and recycling services.
Mayor, we have city staff as well as representatives from to provide a report. No public comment.
Okay, so how was this item noticed, City Clerk?
It was published as required by law.
Great, I'll open the public hearing, recognizing we have no comments. We need a report from our, okay. Do we have any questions? Any discussion on this item? If not, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing and go ahead, Councilmember Duran.
Motion to close the public hearing and approve the item.
Is there a second? Okay, moved by Duran, seconded by Heilman. Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember D'Amico?
Yes.
Councilmember Duran?
Aye.
Councilmember Meister?
Yes.
Mayor Tim Heilman?
Yes.
Mayor Horvath?
Aye.
The item passes.
Wonderful. It is my understanding that items 3, D, E, and F can be taken together in terms of the report because it's all the same. Item 3D is the adoption of a resolution confirming the West Hollywood Design District annual report and levying an assessment for the 2020-2021 fiscal year and approval of an agreement for administering the program of work with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. 3E is the same, but the Sunset Strip Business Improvement District. And 3F is confirmation of the levy of an assessment for the Santa Monica Boulevard Maintenance District for fiscal year 2020-2021, pursuant to the provisions of the Landscape and Lighting 1972. And these items, we can do a report together, but we'll require separate votes. And so I'll open the public hearings and ask the city clerk how these items are noticed.
All items posted and published as required by law. We have staff available and we have one public speaker.
Okay, if it's okay with my colleague, take one public speaker first. Go ahead, city clerk.
We have Genevieve Morrow. Genevieve, you have 2 minutes to speak on items 3D, E, and F.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk, and good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Genevieve Morrow, President and CEO for the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, and I just want to commend the sheriffs and the public safety and the city manager for the outstanding job out there tonight. West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce is uniquely positioned to manage the city's business improvement districts. As part of its core mission and values, the chamber has worked for nearly 100 years, since 1921, to create a vibrant and prosperous commercial districts. The benefits of choosing the chambers are deep history of the bids and established leadership in the community. In the 1990s, the early 1990s, the city saw the need to create merchant districts, and the chamber was instrumental in creating the Avenue of Art and Design, now known as the Design District. And we actually managed this bid for some time, and before it established its own executive director. And then in 1999, the Sunset Boulevard was in need of a clean and safe initiative, and the city chamber worked together to create the Sunset Strip Business Council to form a legalized entity to enhance the image of the strip, and the bid was formed. I want to thank the Travel and Tourism Bureau under the leadership of Tom Keeley and his team, who are handing over the reins to the bids in excellent shape. And we're really excited to get started. We're fully prepared to build the team, support the needs of the bids, and integrate a comprehensive communication and marketing plan to promote businesses and the core essence of these unique districts. We thank you for your time and consideration for the management of these bids by the Chamber of Commerce in West Hollywood.
Thank you, Steve. Madam Mayor, we have one additional speaker who just called in.
Okay.
I believe it's Nick Medio. Nick, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We have 2 minutes to speak on items 3, 3E, and 3F.
All right. First, thank you, Madam Clerk, the Mayor, and members of the City Council. To echo Genevieve and everyone's comments earlier tonight, I want to throw a special shout out to city staff, the Sheriff's Department. Paul Aravallo and his team did an amazing job through this, not out of the woods yet, but through both the careful consideration and thoughtfulness and balance, we're hopeful to move forward. I do want to thank Tom Keeley and his amazing team at the Hollywood Travel and Tourism Board for their stewardship and their great vision in taking the bids and their oversight over the last several years. In terms of the motions tonight, we're excited on behalf of the West Hollywood Design District to see that we move forward with this great collaboration, which is present both between the bids. It's a pleasure to work with Lee and their board over the last 2 years, and to see where our relationship can go together, as well as, of course, through the chamber, all of which are designed to make our business community stronger, as well as more responsive to our clients, guests, and residents alike. So we're very, very supportive of the motions before the council tonight, and are hopeful to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last public speaker.
Thank you very much. So now we have each of these items. Do my colleagues have questions or comments?
I'd like to move the items if there are questions or comments.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and move item 3D first. Is that okay? Okay. So my understanding, we have to vote on these individually. Lauren Langer. Okay,
Yes.
great. So we're closing the public hearing, moving item 3D. City Clerk.
And I have Councilmember D'Amico as a motion. Who seconded? Sorry.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
Thank you. Councilmember D'Amico,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran,
Aye.
Councilmember Meister,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman,
Aye.
Mayor Horvath.
Aye.
3D passes.
And now closing the public hearing and moving item 3E.
So moved.
Okay, moved by D'Amico, seconded by Duran. Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember D'Amico,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran,
Aye.
Councilmember Meister,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman,
Aye.
Mayor Horvath.
Aye.
3E passes.
And item 3F will close the public hearing and the item.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Duran, seconded by Heilman. Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember D'Amico,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran,
Aye.
Councilmember Heilman. I'm sorry, Councilmember Meister,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman. I'll get it right.
Aye.
Mayor Horvath. Item 3F passes.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to item 4A has been tabled. Item 4B, we must deal with this evening. And so it is a report analyzing the proposed initiative proposing an ordinance of the city of West Hollywood modifying the West Hollywood cannabis ordinance. I believe we have report for us available. Would we like staff report on this item?
We have speakers, Mayor?
Yes, we have about 7 people who would like to speak.
Okay, do we want to hear the speakers first? We need a report.
Have an abridged, a short report so we can all be on the same page when they start.
Okay, and John Leonard, you can break down exactly what you're asking us to do tonight. I know that there was a lot of information in this item, so if you could be pretty clear about what it is you're asking of the council tonight, in addition to whatever else we decide to do.
Sure, I can provide a very brief report. So the item before you is a report to the council regarding impacts of the potential ordinance changes within the initiative. The report is lengthy and is meant to help inform your choice about whether to adopt the ordinance tonight or to place the initiative on the November 2020 ballot. So with that in mind, we're available for questions, but ultimately you have 2 choices on this item tonight. You would adopt the ordinance, would be the proposed changes in the initiative, or you would place it on the November ballot. I want to point out that there was a second item on tonight's agenda regarding cannabis. It was at the request of council for May 4th, and it was looking at the initiated item. That would mirror a second cannabis ballot item that was being circulated in the community just as the COVID-19 pandemic started, and those individuals circulating that petition were not able to collect signatures. So they asked the council to potentially look at placing that on the ballot as well. That is not a time-sensitive matter. We have until the first week of August to place an item on the ballot. So that's why that was moved to the June 15th meeting. But for tonight, we do have to make a decision about adopting the ordinance or placing the item on the ballot.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councilmember D'Amico, go ahead.
So John, I guess question, Lauren, we're not supposed to talk about this, please let me. But if it's a city-generated ballot initiative, I know we can issue information to our residents about that. We are not campaigning one way or the other, but in tonight's action, if we do allow the other one to move forward, then that initiative would be immediately able to educate voters about our initiative, and the city's efforts would be delayed until and if we made a decision about something on the ballot. Is that correct?
Well, I would point out that if the council elects to place the item tonight, first initiative on the ballot, we still have to return to council like July for the actual documents to place it on the ballot. So tonight, it's the choice of whether to adopt the ordinance or directing us on the ballot.
Thank you.
And Madam City Attorney, I did ask a question the last time this was before us about whether the fact that there was misinformation circulated in to gather signatures, does that have any impact on our on what we're considering tonight?
Not necessarily. The decision before you tonight is whether or not to adopt the initiative as is, or whether to put it before the voters. And so, as was explained in the staff report to the council tonight, that that can be a very, whether there's any misinformation given to people gathering signatures can be a very difficult thing to prove. It is a criminal misdemeanor if someone was found guilty of it, but really the best place for the facts about an initiative to be discussed is at the ballot box and through the voters. And so there's information in the report about the really high standard that the law imposes, and I'm even sure that the signatures could be withdrawn even if it was determined that there was some inappropriate behavior by the signature gatherer. So the way that the state law reads, there are criminal penalties if someone is found to have given false and misleading information, but the court is really hesitant to interfere in the initiative process.
Okay.
And so that the best place for the truth to come out is through the voters.
Thank you for that clarification. Madam Clerk, can we go to our speakers, please?
Yes, we have our first speaker. Lauren, you're on the call to item 4B. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. I want to first start by saying thank you to Mayor Horvath and the City Council for your leadership during this very difficult time and all the support you've given to the residents of the city and businesses through the COVID pandemic. I also want to thank the staff for doing such a thorough and helpful report on this issue. I'm one of the owners of the artistry. We have received a few of the different licenses. So I appreciate you listening to our input again on this matter. I know this has been an ongoing debate, and you've heard a lot already about it. Although this initiative is called the Close the Loopholes Initiative, it does much more than close loopholes. It substantially changes several aspects of the city's cannabis ordinance. While I'm sympathetic of the challenges current medical dispensaries and edible lounges face, this initiative contradicts the city's vision for cannabis. It increases the number of smoking lounges twofold by granting all edible lounges on-site smoking. It increases the number of retail locations fourfold by allowing lounges to sell unopened products up to the amount sold at retail stores. We don't believe this is what the city or residents intended or desired. My business, the artistry, is in a unique situation because this proposed ordinance would actually take away one of our licenses. As detailed in the staff report, we have rights to both smoking lounge and edible lounge licenses. If the edible license becomes the same smoking lounge license per proposed ordinance, we would only be able to have one consumption lounge license because the current city ordinance doesn't allow one party to have more than one of the same license. This would be extremely unfair to us because we based our plans application on 2 separate lounges, paid fees for both, and were selected as top scoring applicants in both categories. I urge you to put the initiative on the ballot rather than adopt it because it so substantially changes the spirit of the current ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the next speaker, Britta. Britta, if you state your full name, city of residence, and you have 2 minutes to speak on item 4B.
Hi there, thank you. My name is Britta Norwick, and I am counsel for MedMen. I am a current resident of the city of Los Angeles. This is a really difficult time for us to be focused on our ballot initiative while we board up our vandalized shops across the city of Los Angeles. As pointed out in our attorney's May 29th letter, the proponents of the Close the Loopholes initiative are extremely disappointed with the city staff elections code section 9212 report. The report goes far beyond what the elections code contemplates and contains inaccurate and biased commentary about the initiative. With that said, however, Edmen and its new management team, its coalition partners, welcome the opportunity to engage in a collaborative effort with the city rather than engaging in a divisive political campaign this fall. As the agenda report sets forth, the council has two formal options here. The council may adopt the measure or submit it to the voters. However, I'd like to speak about two other options that are also available to you. The first is adopting the measure and then amending it consistent with its purposes. The second is adopting an ordinance that the proponents find to be satisfactory, in which case the proponents can decide by August 7th not to go forward with the measure. While we are fully prepared to support the measure in what would be an expensive and divisive campaign, we also stand by, ready to work with the city and the stakeholders to achieve common ground. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our next speaker, Mr. McConnell. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Good evening.
On item. Hi, you have 2 minutes to speak on item 4B.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jeff McConnell. I'm a partner in England or Canabia now, and I represent the originals, Oz, LA Patients and Caregivers, and Healing. Through many conversations with all of you over the past few months, it's clear to me that this body did not intend to have the originals go out of business. There was a belief that a medical-only license could be a viable business. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. There were only 274 medical ID cards issued in LA County last year. And as the city finance department can attest, only 3% of all cannabis sales in the city are classified as medical. Meanwhile, these pioneers contributed over $1.5 million in adult use cannabis taxes to the city over the first year of collection, on over $22 million of adult use sales. This is no small sum in the current economic climate and should be a consideration as to the fiscal impact of this initiative. Also, there are some who would comment that this initiative is somehow a knock on the city's merit-based process. That is not the case. This initiative does not change any of the outcomes of that process. The companies and individuals awarded licenses through that well-run process are still license holders. This initiative only combines license types to allow viability for these businesses. This is no different than the city amending its ordinance to extend the timeline from 1 year to 2 years for a cannabis consumption city business license. I will close in reminding the council that the Close the Loopholes initiative specifically included a section allowing the council to amend the entirety of the cannabis regulations except for the combination of licenses. The Coalition of Consumption Lounges and Retailers did not want to use your authority, but only wanted to start the conversation. They stand ready to work with the city and the rest of the industry to continue to modify these regulations to protect the welfare of the community and the creation of a successful cannabis industry in West Hollywood. Please adopt the Close the Loopholes initiative tonight, and you could amend it later before any other operators open. Thank you.
Thank you. We have our next speaker, Alex Cardos. Mr. Cardos, you have 2 minutes to speak on item 4.
Thank you. Hi, I hope you're all doing well during these unpredictable times. Cardos here, lounge owner with the Hollywood Close the Loopholes initiative. And I want to thank you for working with us, getting the lounge businesses up and running and keeping legacy cannabis businesses. We want to dispel a few rumors that have come up over the last couple of weeks. One, we don't want to sell to minors, and that has never been something we ever would do. Two, we collected all of our signatures before the stay-at-home order. Three, there is no proof that our signature gatherers did anything. If that was the case, we would love to see some proof. Two of our other lounges that we're going to speak tonight are dealing with destruction of their other businesses throughout Southern California. Such a tragedy what's been going on. The recommendations in the staff report are not practical and do not address the current landscape of hospitality due to COVID-19. It isn't mentioned even once COVID-19. Hospitality-based businesses in West Hollywood are being roadkill if we do not come up with innovative and creative solutions to give all businesses every chance to succeed, given all the hurdles we have to face. We want to bring jobs back to the city. How many businesses closed over the last few months won't be coming back? How many WeHo residents got laid off and need a job? This is a chance to have 10 great businesses that will create hundreds and hundreds of jobs and drive traffic to other nearby businesses. The city is basically a partner in all of the cannabis businesses in West Hollywood because they collect 1% in sales tax from every one of us. The city has a vested interest in everyone's success. And since no one is staying at the hotels or eating in the restaurants right now, the cannabis revenue stream has been deemed essential and truly helps people, could be a revenue stream that helps the city. I know cannabis has been truly vital to my sanity and boosting my immune system over the last 3 months. Adopt this initiative. I have so much more to say, but thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. We have two more speakers, Jackie Subek. Jackie, you have 2 minutes to speak on item 4B.
Great, thank you. Good evening. As a long-term WeHo resident and an edible consumption license holder, member of this initiative, I support you, the elected officials that I voted for, to keep our city safe and make the best decisions as to how, where, and when to utilize city resources. I don't believe that now is the time to spend talking about the ins and outs of cannabis, but rather an opportunity to lift the roadblocks the city has in place and offer our 10 businesses the confidence to know that they at least have a viable pathway forward now. There's no reason to spend tons of time, money, and resources on this when there are so many more important places that need those things right now. Us to move forward with the ordinance, and then after things have settled back down, we can all have a discussion about amending the parts you don't feel comfortable with. There is one critical point I want to rectify today. Our initiative addresses the disqualifying offenses for licensure and contains the exact language from 26057 of the California Business Professions Code. Having the city report try to paint us the exact licensees who your process supposedly selected as the highest quality operators as those who make it easier to sell to minors is nothing short of ludicrous. And for the record, we have verified that we finished signature collecting on March 19th, the day before the stay-at-home order. We didn't collect anything on the 20th, 21st, 22nd. We submitted them on the 23rd. Now, I know that 5D is no longer the agenda tonight, but I do not support the second cannabis initiative. It does nothing for any of our businesses move forward and impose further restrictions. I think it's important for you and the public to understand the committee formed in early January, before the COVID crisis. If the second initiative was so intent on getting on the ballot, they should have started earlier like we did. We did not, and now they're asking for special favors from the city. That's not right. Our committee did everything by the book. They had the exact amount of time we did, but they didn't succeed. Some of our cannabis licensees want to speak, but instead they're having to protect their businesses from potential looting and vandalism while we're still in the midst of a global pandemic. Businesses are struggling and people are unemployed. This is the time when you get to do the best parts of your job, helping people to create a vibrant and thriving community. We are the community and we need your help. I support you. I urge you to support recommendation number 1, adopt the ordinance as it is tonight and end later. Thank you for your service and time.
Thank you, Jackie. We have one additional speaker. You are on for public comment for item 4B.
Good evening, Honorable Madam Mayor and Honorable City Council. This is Jason Beck of the City of West Hollywood and owner of Alternative Herbal Health Services. First of all, I want to thank the city for all it's doing to protect our business and the safety of our community. This is another example of why I know this council doesn't wish for Oz, one of the city's first legal dispensaries, to shut its doors. After all, we've been here since 2004. I wish that this evening's discussion wasn't necessary, and unfortunately, the timeliness and the election code are out of our control. We decided at the end of last year, with no imminent decision regarding our livelihoods available, that we must act to protect our businesses and therefore submitted our Close the Loopholes initiative in January. There is no retail business model that can sustain itself on 3% of all sales. There are only a couple hundred people with medical cards in all of LA County. At Oz, our medical sales would not even cover rent and the cost of goods. Forget paying our employees or taxes. Finally, I want to highlight one section that doesn't get much attention, and it is not part of the AURA initiative. Section 10 amendment specifically allow the city council to amend the cannabis regulation set forth, except for the consideration of license types. Excuse me, the consolidation of license types. This would allow you to adopt the initiative tonight and make changes to it as you see fit for the safety and welfare of the city's residents and businesses. I thank you for your time and encourage you to adopt Amendment 1. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mayor, that was our final speaker.
Okay, thank you. And so now we will turn to discussion. Do we have any questions, or can we just go right into discussion? Councilmember Meister.
I think that we should put it on the ballot. I'm not comfortable with approving a flawed initiative. So that's where I stand.
Okay, pretty succinct. Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I just saw you turn off your mic, so I thought you wanted to speak.
I want to thank the speakers who stayed with us tonight and shared their views. I also agree that I can't just adopt this ordinance. I think there are flaws with it. I think there are problems from a policy standpoint. I would say, however, that I am sympathetic, as I've said before, to the legacy businesses. And I'd like us to use the next 2 months before the beginning of August to discuss ways that we can extend their activities in the city, perhaps allow them to combine in different ways than the ordinance currently allows. I'm also sympathetic to the concern about people who have received license types that really no longer have a viable business model based on the state limitations. So I am certainly open to having discussion in the next couple of months to see if we can resolve those issues, while at the same time not adversely impacting the businesses that did a license through our process. That's going to take some difficult work. It's going to take some challenges, but I think we could. I'm still optimistic that there's a way for us to come up with a solution that is a win-win solution, one that preserves the licenses for those who through the process and were awarded and doesn't open it up to unlimited amounts of competition for those who didn't receive license. But I also want to make sure that we come up with some way of acknowledging and at least allowing some continuation of legacy businesses that have been here in the past.
Okay. Councilmember Durant.
Recommendation number 1, and I think I'm in the minority, but I would adopt the ordinance presented to us by the voters who submitted their names onto the initiative. I think it's really important that we protect the 4 originals who have been with us without any problem, with sheriffs, with code enforcement, been employing people over a decade, part of our business community, always been by our side, and part of doing pioneering work like we're doing in all this cannabis arena is having the flexibility to make corrections where corrections need to be made. Adhering to strict process, adhering to past decisions when the entire world has been turned upside down, to me seems short-sighted. I think that we should jump forward to probably inevitable. Pardon me, I got some sheriffs going up Sanville Central right now. Thank you. Hold on, one more sheriff's car. I think it's inevitable that the voters will pass this initiative, that many of our residents are loyal customers and patrons of the 4 originals. They will defend their cannabis centers. And I think that we've got one set of people who have been loyal and dedicated to our community for a long period of time. One set of people that have not yet even brought their dreams to fruition, who are now going to struggle trying to get it off the ground. And I think that us trying to stick to the process we set forth, not knowing we'd be facing a pandemic, not knowing that we'd be facing economic collapse, not knowing that we would have such high unemployment is really putting form over substance. And so I would support introducing the item on first reading tonight. But as I stated, I think I'm in the minority. Other than that, if it's not going to be passed by a majority of the council members, then I would submit it to voters, and I plan on campaigning in favor of it. Thank you.
Councilmember D'Amico.
Yeah, well, this should go to the voters. I think I am hopeful, was hopeful, remain hopeful, all the parts of speech, about our legacy businesses finding ways, a way or several ways to move forward. I think one of the speakers said we should adopt an ordinance. And in fact, we did adopt an ordinance, and that's how we got the winners. And, you know, we spent months, years, several, I would guess even maybe $1 million of staff time and effort and energy making this ordinance reflect what we believe our community is looking for. If the voters tell us differently in 6 months or 5 months, then of course we will understand and follow the will of the voters. But I think I'm satisfied that for now we don't have all of the shops open that we gave licenses to. We have committed to the existing licensees that they would remain open until that time, and we would have a discussion then. They weren't interested in being patient in that way. And so I think because of the flaws in the ordinance that we've shown, I'm not comfortable voting for something that I would then have to amend. I would rather we just allow the voters to decide and see what happens then.
I agree. I think it should go to the ballot. I don't like that I was lied to in the signature gathering process to my face, but I do know that I will also fairly consider whether I think this what the city intended or what I personally intended when I was going through this process as a council member. And I think more importantly, there is an opportunity for us to have a discussion before we get to August, and hopefully that discussion can be productive and get us to a place where we're actually able to achieve what we intended. So, and certainly this is their right to put it on the ballot. So I support that effort. So it sounds like some agreement. Would somebody like to make a motion?
Mayor?
Yes.
My apologies. We have one additional person who signed on to speak.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that and then we'll vote.
Oh, hi, everyone. This is Rachel Torres. I'm with UFCW 770. Just want to thank the council for all of your work around code enforcement. This protects the lives of cannabis workers. It protects the lives of grocery workers. They have suffered through this pandemic, but they've shown up as the brave heroes, essential workers that they are. And they have actually moved through this process without getting sick, without getting hurt. It really speaks to the commitment of the owners of these stores, as well as the great enforcement of the city and the commitment of the workers. And I understand the issues that have been presented, but it would truly be a tragedy if we ended up after this whole ordeal have these stores closed down. As council members have said, there's a strong commitment that workers feel toward the city. They were devastated last night during the meeting. They want to come back to work. They want to see these small businesses thrive. They want to see West Hollywood be the city that it is committed to. And so we strongly recommend the adoption. We understand there are a lot of other things going on, and we feel that this is one of the smaller issues that the city has to address during these harrowing times. But we thank you. We thank you for your openness. We thank you for working with our coalition, and we look forward to further conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last public speaker.
Okay, and now we'll turn to a vote.
You need a motion, right?
Oh, go ahead. We had the motion
Yes.
already. My apologies. Councilmember D'Amico.
I think it's recommendation 2. I don't have the agenda in front of me. I would need to bring it up just to want to right.
I think it's number 3.
Number 3.
Thank you. All right. I actually do want to see it myself. So if someone else wants to jump in before I make a motion, just like adopting an ordinance I don't believe in, I don't want to make a motion I don't believe in. So
I would move a recommendation that we place this on the ballot for the November 2020 election, but we also direct our staff to continue to work with the initiative proponents to see whether there is any opportunity for compromise.
Second.
Okay. Councilmember
Councilman-
Meister, you had a question before we take a vote. It looks like.
Yeah, well, not a question. I would just add to that the companies, received won the licenses. I think that they also be included in the discussion. So if you can add that, then I'm for this motion.
Yeah, that's definitely the sense. We have to work with all of the interested parties.
Councilmember D'Amico, you're okay with that?
Yes.
All right. So we're all clear on the motion now. Our clerk?
Councilmember D'Amico,
Yes.
Councilmember Duran,
Aye.
Councilmember Meister,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman,
Aye.
Mayor Horvath.
Aye.
The motion passes.
All right. So we moved 5A to consent. 5B, is that something we're continuing to the next meeting?
I don't think we can continue it.
So that
Okay, so that's also for tonight. So do we have any speakers on this, Madam City Clerk?
We don't have any speakers, but we have staff as well as a representative from EAH Housing to provide a report.
Okay, very good. Do we need a report or do we just want to go into comments and discussion? Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Meister.
Yeah, I didn't want to send this to consent only because I just had some concerns. I'm for us being able to use our housing trust fund to build affordable housing. My concerns had to do with, first of all, the appraisal of the property, which seemed high to me. The appraisal showed it as being like $600,000 more than what the developer who had it bought it in 2018, and the appraisal included properties that were on West Knoll and Flores, which are, I would say are probably more, they're higher, receive higher appraisals than, say, properties on Martel or Vista. So I just want to express that concern, and as long as the staff can justify a 10% plus increase in valuation from 2018 with any land improvements, then so be it. But I'd like to hear that, since we do have that fiduciary responsibility. And also, I just wanted to mention that I did look at EAH's website, and it's necessary for me to say that design in the city of West Hollywood, the bar is going to be a little bit higher, or a lot higher, than some of the projects that I saw on the website. And I just want to make sure that they understand that and are aware of that. And it's very important to me to see them go to our design studio early on and make sure that they are going to present a project that is going to be of the standards of the city of West Hollywood. And then my third comment is just that I don't want us to be tied to what they present in terms of number of units or density or types of units. I know some of us are, may think that, we don't need to have as many studio units and maybe we're better off with a few less units and have one bedroom unit. Whatever the composition is, that's not up for discussion right now, but what I want to make sure was clear to staff and to this developer is just that we are not tied necessarily to the concept that they presented, that the idea is that we want to support this because we support affordable housing. I'm not quite sure yet what that project will look like, but I just wanted to, I don't want the staff to take us literally and say, okay, well, council approved this item based on this, and so we need to stick to this. I want us to have the best project we possibly have in terms of a balance of design, what the community wants, what the neighbors, can also live with, and that's really my concerns. Thank you.
Councilmember Duran.
Mayor, thank you. My colleague Lauren Meister makes many very valid and excellent points, and I think we're all very supportive of the comments that she made in terms of high caliber, high quality, and there's still a long process ahead. Tonight, I think we're about securing the loan so we can begin that design process. So I would move the item as presented this evening.
Okay, do we have and seconded by Councilmember D'Amico. I'm glad clarification from Councilmember Meister about how the process will go from here on out, what we are committing to, what we're not committing to, and do have input along the way. So excellent clarification, and I know that we have a motion and a second now. Any further comments? Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
I know I've talked to staff about this, but obviously the outreach to the existing residents there is really critical. I hope that the developer will talk to staff as well as the West Hollywood Housing Corporation to get their experience and understand what the demand is for units in this particular area. Councilmember Meister expressed the importance of high quality design, which of course I support. In terms of the units, some of us might actually want more units rather than less. So the developer is going to have a good opportunity to come up with the project that the developer thinks is most appropriate after getting all the input from the staff and residents and the neighborhood. So good luck with this project.
Mayor, I do have one quick question. And
Go
that is
ahead.
staff, who pays for relocation? Is it in other words, are they presenting us with a property that is vacant, or are we expected to, or the EAH expected to pay for relocation? Is the current owner expected to provide a property that is vacant, or you get my question?
Yes, thank you. My name's Pete Noonan. I'm the Rent Stabilization and Housing Manager for the city. So working to the deal is fees, which the nonprofit operator, EAH Housing, will be providing to existing tenants at the site. So the current owner of these three properties would be selling properties with tenants in place. Next step for EAH would be to reach out to those tenants and to the neighborhood to work through the development of a potential project and bring that forward for the Planning Commission's review. Meanwhile, as the project moves forward towards development, EAH will work with the tenant households existing there at the site to provide with relocation fees and then relocation to other housing, hopefully within Hollywood or the local region. And then part of our arrangement would be that any households that qualify for the new units would have the opportunity to return. So in answer to the Mayor Pro Tem's question, we have, as staff, I have sent a letter out to the residents already at the 3 properties, letting them know about the item this evening and to give me a call if they would like to know more about their relocation and benefits that are provided from the city. And then I also provided in that letter information for them and links to our website.
Peter, will people who are not seniors who may not qualify for this particular project, will they be put on our list for inclusionary housing or future development, future nonprofit development?
Tenants existing at the site now will have priority for our inclusion while they're seeking new housing opportunities. Once they have found new housing, they would no longer have a priority in our inclusionary program.
Okay, are there any more questions?
Well, just to clarify, I think Lauren mentioned new development, but in fact, they would have priority for any vacant inclusionary unit in the city if they were income eligible, is my understanding.
Yeah, and your understanding is correct. We do offer a priority, not just for the new. Of course, there's 2 opportunities here that existing residents have. One is the opportunity to return to the building after it is completed if they would qualify. And this is proposed as a senior project, so it would be age 62 as one of the qualifiers. In addition to while households are seeking housing before the project is developed, they would have priority for units within our inclusionary housing program. And that includes new and existing units that may come available.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We're clear about what our process is going forward on this property. Any other questions before we go to a vote? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember D'Amico?
Yes.
Councilmember Duran?
Aye.
Councilmember Meister?
Aye.
Pro Tem Hyman?
Aye.
Mayor Horvath?
Aye.
The motion passes.
Okay, so now item 5C went to consent, 5D was tabled, 5E, F were consent, 5G tabled. Now we're on to urgency item number 1, which is recovery measures to support businesses as they safely reopen under the Los Angeles County's phased program. And Madam City Clerk, do we have speakers on this item?
We have 1 speaker for this item, and we also have staff on the line as well.
Okay, before we take our speaker, Lauren Langer, is there anything that you need to have on record before we hear from our public?
No, I think I went through it at the beginning of the meeting and why this item was added, and there's a written staff report that was added to the agenda if anybody wants to read it online.
Okay, so we'll take, thank you very much. We'll take our member of the public first and then go into discussion.
Okay, yes, we have Maurice. Maurice, you have 2 minutes to speak on the urgency item number 1.
Maurice Tolosoff, thank you, Council. Just a couple of comments on the proposed ordinance. There's an application form for the businesses to submit, but I would suggest if they can put in an exemplar of what the approval form should look like. I had one of my colleagues contact the district manager for the local ABC office, and they were accepting ABC applications as of this morning. But you need to show approval from your local city So if there can be an exemplar, that's the ordinance, so the businesses will know what type of approval document that they'll be receiving from the city upon approval. My second comment will be on Exhibit A, Item 1E. It says the approved temporary outdoor expansion permit shall be effective for the duration of the urgency ordinance. This ordinance was basically triggered by the ABC regulatory relief for license expansion for adjacent premises. So I would suggest that the ordinance track and be concurrent with the length of time of the ABC ordinance, which I believe is tracking the governor's urgency order and maybe to phase 4. And on that note, I've spoken with both local ABC staff and the headquarter office in Sacramento, urging them to keep this expansion of licensed premises in place for as long as possible. As you might imagine, the capital costs, the legal costs, the compliance costs to establish outdoor dining is going to be very expensive in these times. And therefore, as long as this ordinance can be in place, the better, so the business can recoup their investment. And that's it for my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will turn to my colleagues. Any questions or comments on the item?
I would just say that there, I think it is actually from a conversation that John Duran and I had with Paul about sort of trying to find new ways to allow a quick and seamless expansion of using the public space for our businesses, restaurants, and both alcohol serving and non-alcohol serving, so that we can allow as much sort of flexibility for people to reinvent themselves, even if it's only temporarily, whatever amount of time that might be. So was surprised and happy to see. We thought this was going to go through a slightly more protracted set of hoops and decisions in order to get in front of the entire council, but I'm happy to see that it's an emergency ordinance, and clearly it will have to be followed up with some tweaking, I would think, along the way, but this at least gives our 1,500 restaurants and food and alcohol serving business some immediate flexibility.
Okay. Councilmember Duran, did you want to dovetail on that?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. Yes, Councilmember D'Amico and I were talking to the city manager. What our business need, especially our restaurants, is more geography. They need more space. They need turf in order to accommodate the social distancing requirements of 6 feet apart. They're not going to be able to do that successfully and get their full staff back, much less their full patronage back, without getting some additional space. So it's some loss of our public right of way, but I think for very good reasons to get our businesses back on their feet, get those employees back to work, and get our residents back to something close to normal as they're eating in many of their favorite dining establishments across the city. I know there's cities around the world that are doing the exact same thing that we're proposing tonight, and I think it's the right thing to do at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Meister.
Yeah, I just want to ask City Attorney Lauren Langer if she could address some of Maurice's concerns.
Sure, about the effective date and the permits. This is drafted very quickly in response to, Tara's also on, and she can probably a little more background, but this was drafted in response to a revised order that came out from the county on Friday, and we tried to get it in place very quickly so that restaurants would be able to function quickly. We talked about different lengths of time that this ordinance should be in effect, and where we landed was not every business is going to be serving alcohol in the public right of way, and the ABC relief measure is only related to businesses serving alcohol in the right of way. We didn't want it to automatically expire when that goes away, but we did want to make clear that these permits are temporary, they're revocable, and that there are terms in the permit themselves that determine how long they last for. And when this period of emergency is over, we're going to be bringing a whole host of items to the council to repeal that were adopted during the urgent emergency period. And this will be one. We didn't want to have the ordinance automatically expire when some event out of your control happened, because we want to give the businesses time to adapt to all these changing conditions. So there's provisions in the permit for how long they last, but the ordinance is going to stay in place until the council decides to repeal it. I don't know, Tara, if you have anything else to add on that topic.
No further comments on the expiration of the ordinance, but I'm happy to have a brief presentation. I know it's late and people have been on here for a long time, but if you want any clarity about the urgency order, then I'm happy to provide with a presentation.
I already had to go to my bedroom because I ran out of juice on the computer.
I saw you're changing lighting and scenery there.
A little more lighting. It's just getting late. I'm not sure I'm up for a presentation unless my colleagues need one.
I don't think we need one. Is anybody interested in that? Or do we have questions that we need answered?
I'm just thinking that maybe Tara could talk to the speaker and set up a time tomorrow to clarify. And if there are issues with the forms or the ordinance, we can fix that.
Certainly, yes.
If there's some unintended consequence, hopefully can bring that back at our next meeting or rather quickly to be able to resolve.
If you need a motion, Mayor, I'm here to move the item.
Okay.
Second.
And the second, Councilmember Meister, Madam City Clerk. Yvonne. She left us.
Okay.
You can take the
Hi,
roll.
this is I'm here. Sorry. I'm sorry. I have to unmute myself twice. Councilmember D'Amico.
Yes.
Councilmember Duran.
Aye.
Councilmember Meister.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
Aye.
Mayor Horvath.
Aye.
The motion passes, and thank you, Melissa.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comment for this evening?
No additional public speakers.
All right. Do we have any additional Councilmember Meister?
Yes, some of our residents have been asking during this time of curfew, how are we handling people like walking their dogs? And I can totally understand, like, especially if you live in an apartment, you need to walk your dog. What my understanding is that, you know, the sheriffs are not looking to arrest dog walkers. They're, you know, if you can, your ID with you, try to stay within a reasonable distance of your home. Lauren Langer, can you, is there anything else that we need to tell people who have dogs who need to walk their dogs between 4 p.m. and 6 a.m.?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the curfew, if it's needed, you know, could be very different tomorrow where we're playing by ear. There is a curfew in place, so people do need to stay at home. If you take a dog out to have, you know, take care of its business, you know, that's okay. I recommend staying pretty close to home in order to do that, because there is a curfew in place and law enforcement need to be able to have, you know, to clearly to see that the street here and be able to tell there's bad behavior going on. So I just recommend staying as close to home as possible, and not being out for an extended period of time to make it easier for law enforcement to do their job.
They won't get arrested for walking their dog.
No, I don't think the sheriffs will be arresting anyone for walking their dog.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
Just to follow up on that, I did email the sheriffs earlier, and they clarified that they will not be arresting people who are walking their dogs close to their home, but they did recommend that people carry their ID with them so that they can demonstrate that they live right in the neighborhood and they're out because their dog needs to go to the bathroom. Before we, I just, it's been a very difficult weekend and a difficult night. I just want to thank our city staff, Yvonne and Melissa, and all of our city staff and our city attorney for handling all of these matters, getting us through this meeting. And thank you as well, Mayor Horvath.
And our city manager.
And our city manager, who's not with us, but he's out there monitoring public safety, and he's doing a great job. So thank you to everyone.
And thank you for bringing in David Wilson. I know there's a lot going on, so and you just jumped right in, so it was excellent. But it's nice to be together in community. I just really appreciate. I know I was skeptical about being able to finish this meeting given everything that's going on. I think it was good that we were able to have this. It felt like home in an interesting way, and not even because I'm home. But thank you all for your hard work tonight. And if there's no other, Councilmember D'Amico. Oh, okay. If there's no other comments, we are adjourned.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.